Goddess of Ice, going for One Piece. Author, Maerry. Well, you know the drill. Yuna in One Piece. This FF is basically no priority because I want to finish my other FF first. I'll only write on this when I feel like writing something and don't feel like writing on my Bleach fic. Meeting a bunch of weirdos. For away from any landmass, a single woman could be found floating on the deep blue water. She had blue hair with a few red streaks that would go down all the way to her hips if she wasn't currently floating in the water. She wore a simple blue tank top and a pair of black hot pants, and if her eyelids weren't closed, one would see a pair of deep purple eyes. After floating for a few minutes, the woman groaned in discomfort before opening her eyes and looking around in confusion. I see, must have gotten drunk again. How unusual. Usually, I wake up covered in naked women and not by water. Ding. Congratulations to host Yuna Uzumaki for awakening the greatest pervert system. I don't need a system to become the greatest pervert, for I already am the greatest pervert. That is actually true. Should have thought about this more. Ma, don't sweat it, Kurama. After finishing the conversation with the giant ten-tailed fox living within her, Yuna pondered her current situation and how she got her, and after coming up with nothing, she simply shrugged her shoulders and started floating. Or at least that was what she wanted to do, but after trying to utilize her cultivation, she quickly realized that the cultivation she tried to use was no longer there. Yet again, it's all gone. Is this a split body? Maybe a clone? Oh well, I have no idea what's going on. Weren't cultivators supposed to despair when they realize their cultivation is gone? Meh, I'm a pervert, so there is no problem. I see not even a sliver of correlation between those two things, so I'll ignore that answer and pretend to have heard nothing in fear of what kind of degenerate correlation you will come up with. You sure have gotten used to this, haven't you? It's the only way to prevent myself from going insane. It's cute that you still think of yourself as sane, but whatever. Let's think about what to do next. I am sane. As Yuna was drifting in the ocean, pondering her next move, she noticed something approaching her from the corner of her eyes. Oh? Nice, a ship. As she wasn't sure whether the people on the ship could see her or not, she started swimming towards it, but after swimming for a few seconds, she paused because she could now see the ship in greater detail. Is that figurehead a ship? How peculiar, Tilda. Is that really the most important thing you should worry about? Geez, chill, Kurama. I noticed the pirate flag. Well, I need some information about where exactly I am, so a bunch of people I can be a little rougher with is just perfect. So the first thing you do after coming to another world is torture people, huh? How fitting. What are you talking about, Kurama? Torturing people? It's just a bunch of pirates, Tilda. While Yuna was chatting with her in a fox, there suddenly was movement on the ship sailing in the distance, which Yuna assumed was a sign that someone in the crew had noticed her. Oi, Kurama, am I still drunk, or is a hand attached to a stretching arm currently flying at me? Did Orochimaru make it here? Who the hell is Orochimaru? Sigh, the guy with the tummy elongation technique. Oh. I knew that. He is a great man. Was Anko killed him? He was a great man. Pretty sure he was into little boys. He was a man. Are you sure? I believe we never were entirely sure about that. It was. Well, that's a statement I can get behind. While Yuna and Kurama were talking nonsense, the hand reached Yuna, grabbed her shoulder, and pulled her towards the ship at high speed. As Yuna was approaching the little ship headfirst at high speed, she couldn't help but wonder whether whoever was pulling her towards the ship planned to kill her in the process. You idiot! You are going to kill her! Hearing a female voice yelling, presumably at the person pulling her, Yuna quickly got her question answered. So that person has no malicious intent and is just an idiot. Rolling her eyes at the silly situation, Yuna pressed on a few nerves of the hand holding her shoulder, making it open by itself. Why did my hand open? Do you really want to kill her? As the sounds of a fist smashing on a head echoed over the sea, Yuna stabilized herself in midair, allowing her hand to touch the railing of the ship briefly. The moment she came into contact with it, she pushed herself up, transforming horizontal momentum into a vertical one, allowing her to do a few flips in the air and safely land on the deck of the ship. Oh Tilda, that was really cool. Initially, Yuna assumed those words to be sarcastic, but after seeing the shining eyes of the one who said them, she quickly dismissed that thought. She looked around the deck and couldn't help but wonder how UN pirate-like this whole group felt. The only one looking somewhat like a pirate is the green-haired guy with the 3 swords. MHH. Wait a moment, haven't I seen that guy before? Before Yuna could think about the familiar-looking swordsman any longer, a blond man in a black suit arrived in front of her, offering her a red rose while his eyes had turned into hearts. Beautiful lady, can I invite you to dinner? Well, as soon as he saw me, he started hitting on me. Although it's only natural to do so, this guy clearly is a pervert. Pot calling the kettle. Before Kurama could finish his sentence, Yuna and the rose the man was holding had vanished, and Yuna was now standing in front of this crew's only female member, a young woman with orange hair. Beautiful lady, can I invite you to join my harem? Black. Naturally, the woman instantly fell in love with Yuna. Well, that was at least how Yuna interpreted her action of backing away with a weirded out look on her face. Smooth as always. You know me, Tilda. You are utterly impervious to sarcasm as always, aren't you? MHH. Why did you just randomly mention that? Shishishi, I don't really get it, but you are funny. Ah, I'm Luffy, I'm going to be the Pirate King. The moment Luffy announced his goal, the orange-haired woman slapped the back of his head with an angry expression. Don't tell that to someone you have just met. Oh, and I'm Nami, by the way. As soon as Nami was done berating Luffy, she introduced herself as well. I really wonder what's the dynamic of this group. Luffy's hat looks similar to the one on the ship's Jolly Roger, so I initially assumed that he was the captain, but I'm not so sure about that anymore. Oh well, I might as well introduce myself. I'm Yuna, I'm going to be the harem queen. Harem queen. As soon as that term left Yuna's mouth, Luffy looked at her weirdly while putting up his guard. He didn't really get what a harem queen was, but if it got in the way of his dream, he was ready to fight. What does that mean? MHH, it means I want to sleep with a lot of beautiful women. Beautiful women. Luffy tilted his head in confusion as an image of multiple women sleeping next to each other popped up in his head. I don't really get it, Tilda. This guy sure is innocent, Tilda. Your horns are showing. Whoops, gotta keep those hidden, Tilda. While Luffy was looking at Yuna in confusion, the blonde man who initially tried to woo Yuna conjured an image as well, but he was far less innocent than the one Luffy had, resulting in blood flowing out of his nose while a sloppy smile twisted his face. Tilda, what a paradise. Is this the all blue? Ignoring her crewmate's antics, Nami sighed deeply while lamenting how this crew managed to pick up another weirdo. Anyway, the pervert that is bleeding out on the ground is called Sanji, while the weird-looking guy with the long nose is Usopp. Oi. Who are you calling weird-looking? I'm Captain Usopp, and I... Anyway, the guy over there with the green hair is called Zoro. Snore. The greatest sniper. It quite impressive how he manages to continue sleeping despite the commotion. And I cannon. Oi. Don't ignore me. While Usopp continued his narration, Yuna and Nami weren't paying him much attention, and Nami simply continued her introduction of the last member of the crew, who was firmly sleeping. Quite the unique crew you have here. I wonder who the captain is. Hearing Yuna's question, Nami sighed deeply as her finger pointed at Luffy, who only smiled widely. Seeing Nami point at Luffy, Yuna's eyebrows rose as she resumed speaking. No, I mean, like, who's in charge of this crew? Nami sighed yet again as her finger unmovingly pointed at Luffy. Shishishi, isn't it obvious that I'm the captain? Sure. Yuna decided to simply accept things as they were while gently patting Nami's shoulder. My condolences. Nami could only shake her head with a wry smile when Yuna gave Nami her condolences. Obviously, Nami had a deep respect and loyalty towards Luffy due to everything he had done for her, but she could certainly tell why an outsider wouldn't believe Luffy to be the captain, as he was more or less the opposite of what one might expect a pirate captain to be like. That, and the fact that Luffy was rather easygoing and well not that smart, certainly made him look unfit to be a captain. Well, Luffy just has the kind of personality that drew people in, which justified his position as the captain of the crew. If push came to shove, the whole crew would back Luffy up, while Luffy would do the same for everyone in his crew, which might as well be enough to make him a good captain. Anyway, why were you drifting so far out in the sea? What exactly happened? Hearing Nomi's question, Yuna only shrugged her shoulders and answered her. Sorry, no clue how I got here. MHH. You don't know? Maybe amnesia? Nah. I just got pissed drunk and somehow ended up here. Me being here might have been someone's prank, or I might be the one to travel here by myself. All in all, I have no clue what's going on. Nomi couldn't help but facepalm as she lamented her fate that she joined a crew that was prone to picking up weirdos. Well, it's not like Yuna had actually joined, but that was beside the point. Anyway, do you, perchance, have a map so I can orientate myself? Preferably a world map. Nomi could only shake her head after Yuna made her request. After all, there was just a small pirate crew, so how could they possess a proper world map? In fact, Nomi wasn't even certain whether something like that even existed. No, we don't have a world map. Or at least not a proper one. In fact, I'm pretty sure that only the Marines have the capabilities to create a world map. All I can offer you is a crude map roughly depicting the location of the four seas and the Grand Line. Obviously, Nomi assumed that Yuna wanted to look at a map to find her home island, which would not show up on such a map. Simultaneously, Nomi wondered why Yuna's first thought would be to look at a world map instead of something more local. Just how far did she assume she traveled within one night of getting drunk? The more I talk with her, the weirder the situation gets. I really wonder where she came from. Man, don't worry about it. A crude one will do. Nomi only shrugged her shoulder after Yuna answered her and went inside the ship to fetch the map. All right, I'll get it for you. It's getting weirder and weirder. What does she want to do with a world map in her current situation? Does she seriously not know what this place looks like? In the end, Nomi decided to simply fetch the map for Yuna. It was pretty much common knowledge how the four seas and the Grand Line were structured, so it's not like a map depicting them was worth much. As Nomi was leaving, Yuna let her gaze wander, and moments later, a smirk appeared on her face as she looked at Usopp. Oi, you got anything on you to draw something? Draw something? Hearing Usopp's questions, Yuna's smirk intensifies as she points at the still sleeping Zoro. Hee, isn't his face a great canvas? Let's paint something on it, Tilda. At first, Usopp was taken aback by Yuna's smirk, but after hearing her words, he couldn't help but smile deviously while pulling at a brush. Shishishi sounds like fun, Tilda. After listening to the conversation between Yuna and Usopp, Luffy couldn't help but chuckle while already thinking about what to draw. A few moments later, Nomi returned to the ship's deck and found Yuna, Luffy, and Usopp squatting in front of Zoro, talking with each other. No, if you draw on someone's face, you need to draw at least one dick, but never more than 3. That's like the law. As if there was a law like that. MHH, but aren't we pirates? Shouldn't we do things that go against the law? Yuna briefly pondered on what to do after Luffy mentioned them being pirates, and seconds later, she nodded her head in agreement. Very well, I'll allow the 4th dick. Seeing what was going on, Nomi could only facepalm while deciding to ignore the situation. I got you the world map you wanted, Yuna. Hearing someone calling her name, Yuna's attention was drawn away from Zoro as her gaze landed on Nomi, who was holding a rolled-up parchment. Yuna quickly approached her, and after eagerly opening the map Nomi was offering her, she came to an immediate conclusion. As expected, this is not the world I'm used to, nor is it any I have ever visited. How weird. Looking at this map and how orderly this place is structured, it almost feels artificially made. A whole world. Who knows? There are some strange people out there, Kurama. Yeah, and I have met the strangest of them all, you. As far as I know, you never tried something like this. Well, I simply have different interests, so it can't be helped. So you do not deny the part where I claimed you are the strangest, huh? Why deny the truth? As Yuna was checking out the map, Nomi eyed her with curiosity, wondering what she was looking for and what she was trying to achieve by studying a map like this. To Nomi's surprise, it took Yuna not even 5 seconds to nod in approval, seemingly having found what she was looking for. Well, although I expected this, it seems I am. What are you doing? Were you drawing on me? Before Yuna could tell Nami her conclusion, an anger-filled roar echoed over the ship. Naturally, the owner of that voice was Zoro, who had just woken up and realized that someone was drawing something on his face. ZZ Zoro, calm down. This wasn't our idea. That's right, Yuna was the one who wanted to draw on your face. Who the hell is Yuna? Looking around the ship, Zoro quickly noticed that there was indeed an additional person on the ship who was currently talking with Nami. Feeling Zoro's gaze on her, Yuna had to suppress a smirk as her eyes widened in surprise. I was the one who suggested that. You just fished me out of the sea and saved my life. How could I possibly dare to mess with one of you like that? While Luffy and Usopp were utterly dumbfounded at how smoothly Yuna lied to Zoro, Zoro gritted his teeth in anger as he glared at the duo. So you are not only messing with me like this, but you are even pushing the blame on an innocent bystander, her. Wait, Zoro. TT, this isn't. Moments later, the sound of Zoro beating up Luffy and Usopp echoed over the ocean as Yuna returned her attention to Nami, who could only flinch at how smoothly and ruthlessly Yuna backstabbed Luffy and Usopp. I thought she was just some random, somewhat silly weirdo, but this woman is very dangerous. I'm honestly not sure if I could pull off lying like that this smoothly. While Nami's caution towards Yuna increased with the background noise of two people getting beat, Yuna rolled up the parchment she had gotten from Nami as a relaxed smile appeared on her face. Anyway, after seeing the world map, I have figured out my situation. I have traveled to another world. Huh? While all of that was happening, Sanji was still on the ground, blood slowly dripping out of his nose while a deranged smile marred his face. A tilde to think I would find the all blue this early tilde. Getting to know the world. Following Yuna's claim that she was from another world, she briefly told the crew about her background, not really caring whether they knew about it or not. After Yuna finished her brief explanation, unsurprisingly, no one believed her. Well, no one except for. So cool tilde, are there any tricks from another world you can show us? Luffy, whose eyes were currently shining as bright as a flashlight. Anyway, Yuna had already stealthily tried to use her ice and she could easily control it. She could show that off to Luffy but decided to keep her cards hidden for now. After all, she still had no clue how this world works. Well, my specialty is making other women come. Come? Come where? Anyway, Nami, help Yuna out, she wants to show us Summit. Bang. Shut up, idiot. Before Luffy could finish his sentence, Nami's hands moved, flipping 3 segments of a wooden staff into the air, which she expertly assembled within an instant and proceeded to smack it on Luffy's head repeatedly. Nami-san tilde, I would also like to see Yun. Bang. This time, it was Sanji's turn to take a beating from Nami, but unlike Luffy, who had no idea what he was talking about, Sanji knew exactly what Yuna meant, so Nami decided to beat him up some more. Well, when you are done with the beating, could we continue the conversation? Isn't this your fault? While Yuna was casually asking to continue the conversation, Nami couldn't help but get angry due to Yuna being the one who derailed it in the first place. Despite that, after giving Sanji another smack, Nami sighed and decided to continue talking. Oh well, whatever. Frankly, I don't believe your story in the slightest, but I can, at the very least, acknowledge that you don't know anything about this place due to some reason or another. Yeah, I assumed that would be the case. Honestly, I'm surprised that Luffy actually believed my story so easily. Again, are you sure he is the captain? So can we just drop that topic? Ha ha ha, fine, fine. Anyway, how about you give me a rough outline of how things work around here? Since there wasn't anything better to do anyway, Nami swiftly started speaking, giving Yuna a rough overview of the 4 seas, the Grand Line, and the forces active in those places. World government. That's corrupt as hell, isn't it? Hearing Yuna's question, Nami briefly paused her explanation and pondered it for a short moment before simply shrugging her shoulders. I'm not really sure. Never had any interactions with the world government. Well, how about their subordinates, the Marines? An ugly expression appeared on Nami's face as a mouse-like man wearing a Marine uniform popped up in her mind. Well, I didn't have that much contact with them, but the contact I had was pretty bad. Meh, if the subordinates are bad, then the leaders are even worse. Well, considering you are pirates, I guess it doesn't matter too much for you. After agreeing to Yuna's assessment, Nomi continued talking, telling Yuna about why they were sailing on the sea in the first place and the current course of the world. Gold Roger, her. Quite the cunning man. Cunning. Nomi wanted to ask Yuna why she was calling Roger cunning, but before she could do so, a huge bird landed in front of her, making Yuna wonder what was going on. Surprisingly, Nomi handed to Bird a coin as if it was natural and got what appeared to be a newspaper in return. Oh? Newspaper delivery via Bird, that's pretty nifty. Who's the one responsible for printing it? MHH. Printing it? I'm honestly not entirely sure, but I have heard that the world government frequently uses it to spread the newest news. The world government? EU, please put that garbage away. I hate propaganda papers. Now that Yuna had claimed that the world government was probably corrupted, Nomi had no trouble seeing why she wouldn't trust the newspaper either. Frankly, Nomi had always taken the information in the newspaper with a grain of doubt, but no matter what, it was still the best method to get news from all around the world. Yeah, I can see why you would think like that. However, there are occasionally some important events mentioned, and the main selling point of this newspaper isn't even the articles within. It's this. As soon as Nomi stopped speaking, she took out a bunch of flyers from within the newspaper, and on top of that stack was a wanted poster of a man that was rather familiar. Monkey D. Luffy, her. Is 30 million a lot? Did you seriously not make a joke about the D part? Who are you? It's still cooking. Patience. Tilda, it's a lot. As far as I know, it's the highest bounty in the East Blue. Yuna's eyes widened in surprise when she realized that Luffy was such a notorious person. Her gaze landed on him, greed briefly flashing through her eyes as she licked her lips in excitement, causing a shiver to go down Luffy's spine. Weird, why did I shiver just now? I don't feel cold at all. Luffy, who grew bored a long time ago due to Nomi telling such a long story, and long since vanished and was currently seated in his favorite spot, the top of the ship's figurehead, so he didn't even know about his new bounty, nor did he notice Yuna's gaze. However, moments later, Yuna's gaze returned to Nomi, who was sighing again and again due to this crew finally having someone with a bounty. She just wanted to explore the sea and had no interest in actual piracy. Well, occasionally stealing some money should count, right? What the hell did Luffy do to earn such a high bounty? He seems rather harmless to me. Well, since they fished me out of the sea and they seem to be genuinely good people, I won't be going for the bounty yet. Well, basically, he beat up a bunch of notorious pirates and, following that, beat up a corrupted marine. I can't be certain, but I assume that is the reason for this bounty. After Nomi finished her explanation, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement as her face widened into a grin. So, all of that happened and you still didn't realize that there was something messy about the world government. Hearing Yuna's words, Nomi couldn't help but blush a little as she only now realized how obviously messed up the situation was. Frankly, she couldn't really be blamed for that, as people tend to trust those who have been ruling for a long time to a certain degree. Coffee anyway, look, Luffy, you have a bounty now. What? Since Nomi wasn't sure how she should answer Yuna's teasing question, she decided to stir the conversation in a different direction by telling Luffy about his bounty, who immediately snatched the bounty poster out of Nomi's hand and started inspecting it in excitement. Shishishi, look at that. I'm a wanted man now. While Nomi sighed deeply due to Luffy being happy about being a wanted man, the rest of the crew got attracted by his excited yells and gathered around him to take a look at the poster. While the rest of the crew were bustling around Luffy's wanted poster, Nomi only shook her head as she resumed her conversation with Yuna. Say, you earlier said that Roger was cunning. What exactly do you mean by that? Isn't it pretty clear? Especially now that Luffy has gotten a bounty pretty much for no reason, it should be pretty clear what is going on here. Clearly, the government doesn't want people to explore the world. Otherwise, they wouldn't hand out bounties so easily. With that in mind, their end goal is very likely to prevent people from reaching that last island and get the so-called One Piece. Although I don't know if Roger actually reached the last island, but that doesn't really matter. He knew that there was something the government was hiding, so he announced to the world that his greatest treasure was hidden there. In doing so, he motivated the whole world to look for something the world government doesn't want them to look for, as such, dealing a blow to the world government with just a few words. No matter how I look at it, that's quite cunning. The moment Yuna finished speaking, Nomi looked at her in astonishment. Obviously, there was no proof that what Yuna had just come up with was true, but after listening to Yuna's explanation, she certainly could imagine it to be true. Is that really the same person who decided to childishly draw on Zoro's face? Now that I think about it, she got out of that situation rather smoothly as well. Are you actually smart? No, didn't I already say that I'm Yuna? Never mind, she's an idiot. Naturally, Nomi could tell that Yuna was attempting to make a lame joke and didn't actually misunderstand the question, but in the end, she decided that she would rather acknowledge that Yuna was an idiot instead of reacting to the wordplay. While Yuna and Nomi were talking and the rest of the crew was talking about Luffy's wanted poster, another ship approached, its flag clearly depicting it to be a marine ship. Seeing the ship approaching from the corner of her eyes, Nomi's eyes widened as her gaze landed on Yuna. You should hide yourself, or you might be considered a pirate as well if you are seen together with us. Hearing Nomi's words, Yuna couldn't help but smile a little due to Nomi actually looking out for her despite pretty much being a stranger. However, she honestly didn't care about being seen as a pirate. After all, from what she had heard so far, Yuna's only choice pretty much was to become a pirate. The other choices were just living as a civilian, which Yuna obviously wouldn't do, or joining the Marines, which might give her some fun opportunities, but there was no way Yuna would ever join such a stiff organization. Her being seen as a pirate and getting a bounty was pretty much inevitable. While Yuna and Nomi had a brief conversation, Zoro had noticed the approaching marine vessel as well and drew his blade. I actually made a mistake here in the previous chapter. Currently, Zoro only has one blade and not three. However, seeing Zoro draw his blade while walking closer toward the railing, Yuna blocked his path with a smile on her face. Ma, let me help you out here. I don't have any money to repay you for fishing me out of the sea, but I can at least get rid of these ants for you. Are you sure you can fight? Fight? I'm just slapping away a bunch of insects, no big deal, Tilda. I'm Lieutenant Iron Fist Full Body, and you are under arrest. While Yuna was briefly conversing with Zoro, the marine vessel got closer, allowing the captain of the vessel to speak directly to Yuna and the Straw Hat's crew. Well, I offer you a different deal. You leave us alone, and in return, I won't beat you up. When the marine ship appeared on the horizon, Yuna wasn't entirely certain how strong the people of this world were. After all, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji felt quite strong to her, while Nomi and Usopp gave off a rather weak feeling. However, after the marine vessel had gotten closer and got within Yuna's senses, she quickly realized that the average level of power, at least in the East Blue, was scaled towards Nomi and Usopp instead of Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, allowing her to be confident in dealing with this so-called Lieutenant Iron Fist Full Body, who barely felt stronger than Nomi. I see, so you are resting. Sink their ship. Following Full Body's order, around 5 Marines that were either too thin or too thick to be considered a threat started moving, and a few seconds later, a cannonball was fired, causing Yuna to shake her head with a wry smile on her face. Really? That's all you have? Seeing the cannonball flying towards her, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she raised her hand. The moment the cannonball was about to hit her, she tilted her body to the side while simultaneously moving her hand beneath the cannonball and raising it up a little, causing it to miss the ship. Seeing Yuna's action, Fully Body gritted his teeth in anger as he commanded his subordinates to fire another shot. However, seeing the cannon they were preparing, Yuna could only shake her head as the whole thing was covered in tears and dents. Seriously, what is this all about? The whole ship looks like it is about to sink, so why the hell are the Marines still using it? Are they out of budget, or is this Full Body guy simply too useless to give him a good vessel? While Yuna was deep in thought, the next shot was loaded into the cannon, but the moment it was supposed to fire, it simply exploded, resulting in a black smoke cloud as Full Body and his fellow Marines were flung away. This is the most pathetic display I have ever seen, and that means a lot coming from me. What about Sasuke? Well, I get your point, but he at least was cute when he got angry and transformed into his succubus form, so that doesn't count. Realizing that the ship's cannons clearly weren't ready for combat, Full Body's fury exploded as he ordered his men to board the Straw Hat pirate ship. So, 3 seconds later, all 6 of them, including Full Body, jumped on the Straw Hat pirate ship. Another 3 seconds later, all 6 of them had returned to their own ship, bruises covering their body due to Yuna smacking them back to their own ship like they were tennis balls. Well, that was boring, Tilda. The rest of the Straw Hat crew couldn't help but look at Yuna in surprise, not expecting her to actually be strong enough to fight back against the Marines. However, the most surprised person was undoubtedly Nami. Although it was hard to judge just how strong Yuna was since she defeated the Marines without exerting herself, she felt that she was at least as strong as Sanji, who had defeated Full Body before. Can women really become that strong? Considering the greater picture, that question was rather ridiculous, as there were plenty of strong women in the Grand Line, but Nami had never been to the Grand Line, so the only strong woman she knew about was Alvida, who only had a measly bounty of 5 million belly while not exactly looking like a woman either. Obviously, Nami was not someone who cared too much about getting stronger, but considering how helpless she felt during the whole hour-long incident, she couldn't help but feel that if she could get stronger, a lot of things might resolve themselves more easily. Although I'm just the navigator of this crew, and I don't necessarily need to be as strong as Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, I cannot help but feel like I need to get stronger as well. Just how dangerous is the Grand Line? Can I really expect those three to be always there to protect me? As those thoughts passed Nami's mind, she could only shake her head. Obviously, that's impossible. Who knows what kind of powerful enemies will stand in our way in the future? There is no way I can expect those three to protect me while fighting people potentially as powerful as someone like Mihawk. If I ask her, will Yuna be willing to help me get stronger? Asking herself that question, Nami could only shake her head. After all, why would Yuna do something like that? Although Yuna's story of being from another world was still rather unbelievable, there was no doubt that there were at least some secrets to Yuna's strength. Considering Yuna wasn't even part of the crew, Nami was certain she wouldn't be willing to reveal anything to her. Clearly, I need to get stronger, but I'm not sure how to approach something like that. I don't think I can endure the insane training Zoro is putting himself through, nor do I have a devil fruit like Luffy, nor the inexplainable strength Sanji possesses, so what am I supposed to do? Maybe I can just ask Yuna for advice. It's not like I want her to reveal any groundbreaking secrets, so asking for advice should be fine, right? I can only hope she doesn't tell me to copy Zoro's insane training regime. Lounge Town. So, who gave you the D, Luffy? The D? Yeah, who was it? Was it your father or maybe your mother? There was a brief pause in the conversation Yuna and Luffy were currently having before Luffy tilted his head in confusion. I have a father and mother. Yuna almost face-planted when she heard Luffy's unexpected answer. Moments later, she clicked her tongue as she decided not to push the joke any further. Not bad. Not bad at all. He is a formidable opponent. Isn't he just an idiot? Those are excuses I'm not willing to make. Oi, everyone, I see the next island. Yuna's thoughts were interrupted by Usopp yelling that he could see their next destination. Seeing the island himself, a broad smile appeared on Luffy's face as he started laughing. Shishishi, the island of the beginning and the end. I'm excited. Hearing the name of the island, Yuna looked at Nami questioningly, causing her to realize that Yuna likely had no idea what was going on. It's called like that because it's not only Gold Rogers's place of birth but also the place where he was executed. Yuna's eyes sparkled with a hint of curiosity after Nami answered her unasked question. Considering the meaning Roger had for this word, she deemed that there must be some interesting sights on this island. Moments later, their ship docked at a small port far away from the hustle of the inner city. After all, they clearly displayed their pirate flag, so docking too close to popular ports would draw too much attention. Before they could even fully fasten their ship to the port, Luffy had already jumped on shore and was running towards the inner city. I'm going to the place where the king of the pirates was executed. Seeing their captain running away and ditching all his responsibilities, a collective sigh went through the crew as Yuna looked at what had just happened in amusement. Seriously, why is that guy the captain? Well, leaving Luffy aside, I need to buy more supplies for our journey to the Grand Line. Hearing Sanji's words, everyone nodded their head as they watched him vanish inside the city as well. I'm going to look for 2 new swords. The next to speak was Zoro, who had lost 2 of his 3 swords in his previous battle with Hawkeye. Since he specializes in 3-sword style, he obviously needed to restock his swords. Oh? Are you going to buy swords? I guess I'll come with you. Everyone was slightly baffled due to Yuna suddenly claiming that she wanted to buy swords. Although she had clearly demonstrated that she could fight when she wiped out Full Body and his crew, no one here expected her to use swords. Why bother? Can't you just make a sword out of ice like you usually do? I could, yes, but before I reveal what I can do, I want to get a better grasp of this world. Right now, I don't even know how weird it is for someone to be able to create ice out of nowhere, so I would rather use real swords for a while. You are a swordsman. While Yuna had a brief conversation with Kurama, Zoro couldn't help but be curious about Yuna using swords. However, hearing Zoro's question, Yuna shook her head. Depends on the definition of the word. From the way you hold yourself, you are a swordsman, someone who only uses the sword to fight. However, I'm different. I utilize swords in my combat style, but it's not the main focus. After Yuna finished speaking, Zoro briefly pondered her words before nodding his head in understanding. He could more or less grasp what Yuna was talking about. Wait a moment, Yuna. Why would you even go with Zoro? From what I understand, you didn't plan to continue your journey with us, so why bother potentially being seen with a pirate? To that question from Nami, Yuna could only shrug her shoulders. Frankly, I don't feel like wiping out those small fry marines was enough to compensate you for your help. I'll need to do a few things on this island, and after I'm done, I'll be able to pay you back for fishing me out of the water. No need to worry, I'll be done before you plan to leave. Although Nami wasn't entirely sure what Yuna planned to do, in the end, she could only nod her head in understanding. Well, if that is what you want to do, then I don't mind. By the way, considering what you have told us so far, you shouldn't have any money. You want to borrow some tilde? No thanks, I would rather not get ripped off. Don't say something like that. As a fellow woman, I wouldn't rip you off for too much. Although Nami only whispered that last, Yuna could still easily hear it, causing her to chuckle in amusement. Considering the way Nami reacted to different things, Yuna had already expected her to be a money grubber, so loaning money from her would definitely be a mistake. However, you shouldn't have any money, right? How will you be able to afford a sword? Ma, no need to worry about that. I have my ways. After Yuna finished speaking, Nami couldn't help but frown, and moments later, she widened her eyes in shock. No way. Don't tell me you want to sell your body. Yuna almost tripped when she heard Nami's outrageous statement and couldn't help but look at her like she was an idiot. Sell my body? What are you talking about, little girl? There is no being in existence that has enough money to buy something as exquisite as my body. Hearing Yuna's answer, Nami's face deadpanned as narcissism so thick it could basically be tasted radiated out of Yuna. Sigh, fine, just go already. Yuna chuckled in amusement, seeing Nami's annoyed facial expression as she jumped down the ship as well, following Zoro into the depths of the city called Logue Town. Moments later, Yuna could be seen leisurely walking after Zoro, who made his way toward the center of the city. However, as they were walking, Yuna looked around in confusion as she felt she had been there before. Is it just me, or is this the second time we walked through this street? Actually, it's the third time. You didn't notice the second one because you were ogling a woman. Well, I prefer calling it a predator looking for prey. That makes it even worse. While lightly chuckling, she curiously glanced at the back of Zoro's head, wondering why he walked so confidently while clearly having no clue where he needed to go. Oi, Zoro, are you sure you know where you are going? Yeah, I'm aiming for the center of the city. Surely there will be something like a marketplace there. There is no way such a place doesn't have a shop that sells swords. MHH sounds reasonable. So, do you know how to get there? Hearing Yuna's question, Zoro looked at her like she was a weirdo before rolling his eyes. Isn't that obvious? If you want to reach the marketplace, just walk down the biggest roads. Yeah, the hell. Just as Yuna was about to agree with Zoro's words, he suddenly turned left and walked into a cramped alley that Yuna had no doubt would end in a dead end. What in the world is wrong with this guy? Is he trying to be funny? Damn, why is there suddenly a dead end? Yuna couldn't help but facepalm after Zoro's annoyed yell moments later. However, it got even worse as Zoro came out of the alley and turned right, walking toward the direction he came from. Suddenly, as if guided by a higher force, he straight up turned 180 degrees and continued walking as if nothing happened. Wow, just wow. This guy is utterly helpless. Isn't it time for you to either catch that idiot and lead the way or to just ditch him? What are you talking about, Kurama? This is hilarious, so I'll continue observing Tilda. Fun over function, huh? Like always. Just like that, Yuna continued following Zoro around, observing everything he did like she was in a zoo, watching an exotic animal. Currently, the duo ended up back at the Straw Hat cruise ship, the Going Maerry, for the second time, causing Zoro to curse at how weirdly the city was built, while Yuna almost laughed out loud. Wow, this guy is a genius. I would use another word, but sure, let's go with genius. Wait a moment. I think I just saw a glimpse of the Hokage building. Ha. No, that must have been my imagination. While Yuna continued observing Zoro's next move, the duo noticed two thugs pressuring a young woman with chin-length black hair wearing a single katana at her side. Yuna and Zoro both were about to intervene but stopped themselves when they saw the woman's movement, which clearly showed that she had some skill with the sword. Before either of the two thugs knew what was going on, she had already reappeared behind them, slashing both of them once, putting them out of commission. Unfortunately, the moment her attack was over, she tripped over a bump in the road, causing her to fall while the glasses she was wearing were sent flying through the air. Before she could fully fall to the ground, a hand snaked around her waist and steadied her while another hand caught her glasses out of midair. While the woman was still dazed from almost falling, she felt someone gently putting her glasses back on her head before she felt her chin gently being raised, forcing her dark brown eyes to meet a set of deep purple ones. Oh my, careful there, young lady. Well, now that I can see your face, I have to say you are quite beautiful, Tilda. I would like to invite you to dinner, then into my bed, and into my harem, Tilda. Hey. Naturally, the woman was confused by someone acting so bluntly toward her, causing her to unsteadily stand up while getting more and more flustered. WWL, thank you F for catching me, B but LL have to decline. I'm Tashigi, by the way. Geez, no problem. Oh well, now that I have caught you, I guess it's time to capture you, Tilda. See, capture me. W, what are you talking about? Tashigi, who clearly hadn't even digested Yuna's first words, became more and more confused as Yuna continued saying things she couldn't fully understand. Anyway, I got to go now. Again, thank you for catching me. Taking some distance from Yuna, Tashigi gave her a light bow and quickly ran away, too flustered to continue the conversation. Seeing the back of the running Tashigi, Yuna chuckled in amusement as Zoro looked at her in a weird mixture of disgust and dumbfoundedness. Are you some kind of female version of that stupid cook? Hearing Zoro's question, Yuna frowned deeply while looking at Zoro in contempt. Female version of Sanji. Are you looking down on me? Sanji is an inferior male version of me. Not happy about Yuna's declaration in the slightest, Zoro only sighed deeply before he decided to drop this matter. After all, this wasn't his problem. He was just about to yet again walk in a random direction when Yuna caught his arm and pointed at a nearby shop that had a sign that looked like two crossed swords. No need to search any further, Zoro. That one looks like a weapon shop. Hearing Yuna's words and seeing the sign, Zoro nodded in agreement and followed Yuna toward the shop. Seconds later, the shop's door opened, allowing Yuna to step in first and immediately greet the person behind the counter. Yo, shopkeeper, we are here to buy a few swords. Hearing someone entering his shop, the shop's owner looked up and couldn't help but frown when he saw Yuna enter. Seeing a female swordsman always reminded him of that annoying marine woman that kept pestering him about famous blades. However, there was something else that bothered him even more. Are you some kind of royalty? Yuna was rather confused by that question and looked behind, where she instantly noticed Zoro clearly no longer following behind her. For fuck's sake, is he serious? That was like 20 meters. Okay, I have to admit that guy really is a genius after seeing this. Shaking her head with a mirthful smile, Yuna decided to stop bothering about Zoro as her gaze wandered all over the shop, appraising what was available, causing her to frown rather quickly. Seeing the frown on his customer's face as she inspected his wares caused him to frown as well. After all, from his perspective, it looked like the woman in front of him disregarded what he had accumulated over the years of owning this shop as unsatisfactory. Is there a problem, young lady? Hearing the shopkeeper's question and the unhappiness in his tone, Yuna couldn't help but smile wryly as she answered his inquiry. I prefer using double-edged blades. After Yuna answered him, the shopkeeper couldn't help but mimic Yuna's wry smile as he immediately understood the problem. After all, double-edged blades weren't really popular, so he sold almost none. Well, it can't be helped. As you have undoubtedly noticed, single-edged blades are by far the most popular, and almost no one uses anything else. Yeah, I have noticed, but I've always been curious why. Do you know the reason? Obviously, the only thing Yuna had noticed was that this shop mostly sold single-edged blades, and she had no idea about the global situation, but she felt that admitting that she didn't know about it would look weird. So, she simply told a lie. After pondering Yuna's question for a brief moment, the shopkeeper simply shrugged his shoulders and resumed talking. Well, I can't be too sure about this, but I think the reason that single-edged blades are so popular is that most of the famous swords are single-edged as well. After the shopkeeper finished his explanation, Yuna nodded her head, believing that there was a good chance that his theory was correct. I see, so the best blacksmiths of the world are mostly creating single-edged swords. Some kind of Eastern culture dwarven nation. Oh well, no need to ponder on this any longer than necessary. After all, if such a nation does exist, it's undoubtedly in the Grand Line. Only the world's harshest environments should be able to push blacksmiths to their absolute limit, allowing them to create masterpieces. After Yuna discarded the notion of thinking about the situation any longer, her gaze yet again roamed through the shop, and after inspecting a few blades she deemed to be the best ones available, she made a decision. There is no adequate blade that fits my taste, so I guess I'll go with something different for a while. Considering the quality of what is available, I guess I'll go with two-sword style for now and see how things develop from there. Worst case, I can always blow my cover and use my trusty ice blade. Do you even have money to buy anything? Or do you plan to simply rob this guy? Money? What are you talking about, Kurama? I have plenty of money. Huh? Since when? Since I found a bunch of it just lying around. You conveniently found money lying around. Where? Inside the pockets of a bunch of rich-looking guys, Tilda. Right, I should have expected that. Zoro, the genius. After pondering over the popularity of single-edged swords a little longer, Yuna simply shrugged her shoulders while her gaze returned to the shopkeeper. Oh well, I guess I'll go for two good single-edged ones for now instead of bothering about not-so-good double-edged ones. The name is Yuna, by the way. Ipponmatsu. Hearing Yuna's words, Ipponmatsu simply introduced himself as well and didn't comment on Yuna's words any further. In the end, it's Yuna's decision what she wants to buy. As Yuna's gaze wandered through the shop, it landed on an unsuspecting barrel that had a bunch of damaged-looking swords sticking out of it. However, Yuna could immediately tell that there was something off about one of those swords. Tilda, you are quite bold, Ipponmatsu. To think you would sell something like that. Or maybe you aren't aware of what it is. As those words left Yuna's mouth, she made a beeline toward the barrel filler with cheap-looking swords and pulled one of them out. Although it looked old and dusty, a trained eye would immediately notice that it was anything but a cheap sword. In fact, it was a sword of considerable quality if compared to everything else displayed in the shop. Seeing what Yuna had found, Ipponmatsu groaned loudly. It seemed like Yuna noticed what kind of sword she just had pulled out, but before he could talk about it, Yuna resumed speaking. A cursed sword, huh? It's been a while since I've seen one. Following those words, Yuna slightly pulled the blade out of its sheath and inspected it. Feeling signs of malice coming from the blade, Yuna smiled a little as she nodded to herself. My senses were right. This is indeed a cursed sword. Please don't tell me you plan on using that. Initially, Kurama couldn't feel anything from the sword, but now that it was partially out of its sheath, he felt a slight sense of discomfort. He felt like it would be annoying to constantly have that kind of feeling in the back of his mind. Unaware of the conversation between Yuna and Kurama, Ipponmatsu was a little surprised that Yuna managed to figure out the flaw of the blade, but considering how she instantly went for it, he simply assumed that she had some kind of sensitivity toward curses. It's impressive, you can tell. Yes, this sword and all other swords of the same lineage are cursed, their wielders doomed to an early death. You seem to be knowledgeable about curses, but I still hope you won't buy this sword. No, in fact, I can't let you buy it. Hearing Ipponmatsu's words, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she put the sword back where she had found it. Ma, no worries. I'm not interested in using cursed items. Too much of a gamble. However, why even have it out here if you don't plan to sell it? The moment Ipponmatsu heard Yuna's words, he couldn't help but become a little depressed, causing his shoulders to sag as he glared at the sword Yuna just returned to its place in annoyance. Reading his facial expression, Yuna quickly figured out what was going on in Ipponmatsu's head. I see, on the one hand, you want to get rid of the sword, but on the other hand, you don't want to be responsible when someone dies due to its curse. Although Ipponmatsu was surprised at how easily Yuna read him, in the end, he only nodded his head while sighing deeply. Sigh indeed. I want to get rid of it as soon as possible since I'm not sure if I'm affected by its curse, and I'm not even sure what would happen if, for example, I toss it into the sea. Yuna nodded in approval the moment Ipponmatsu stopped speaking. Indeed, curses were a tricky thing. Some cursed objects would simply return to their owner after they tried to get rid of it, and others would put a stronger curse on you if you tried. There could be all kinds of nasty mechanisms imbued into a cursed object. Well, I can at least tell you that you won't be affected by its curse as long as you don't use the sword. The strength of the curse is based on how many lives you take using the sword. Hearing Yuna's explanation, Ipponmatsu looked at her in shock, barely able to understand what he had just heard. Is that true? Seeing the agitated old shopkeeper, Yuna only shrugged her shoulders and answered him. Why should I bother lying to you? Visible relief washed over Ipponmatsu's face as soon as Yuna finished speaking. He had been stressing about that damn cursed sword for a while now, causing him to barely be able to sleep at night. Moments later, a serious expression appeared on his face as he looked at Yuna, causing her to tilt her head in confusion. Is something wrong? Your talent to identify a curse is impressive, but what about your skill with a sword? Although Yuna didn't really get why he was asking that now, she still shrugged her shoulders as she took a huge two-handed sword from the wall. Holding the sword, Yuna couldn't help herself but frown, as the blade clearly wasn't well made and unbalanced. Well, as I've said, I prefer double-edged two-handed swords like this. I'm pretty decent with single-edged swords, but with something like this. Yuna slashed the blade down, causing the air to ripple as a small shockwave occurred the moment the blade was swung down, making it clear that if Yuna had swung harder, the shop would have been devastated, causing Ipponmatsu's eyes to bulge and mouth to open. My technique is unparalleled. Putting the sword she had just used back where she found it, Yuna looked at the utterly astonished Ipponmatsu and chuckled in amusement. Frankly, the old man was not a swordsman, so there was a limit to how knowledgeable he was about swordsmanship. However, he has been the owner of this weapon shop for a long time, and he has seen a lot of people swinging swords. Since he started working here, not once had he ever seen such a clean, beautiful slash. There was a sword in the back of his shop that he really wanted to give to someone worthy of it, but unfortunately, it was not the kind of blade Yuna would prefer, making him hesitate. However, after pondering the situation a while longer, a serious expression appeared on his face as he had made a decision. Please wait a moment. I have something I want to give to you. Seeing Ipponmatsu briskly walk through a door towards the back of the shop caused Yuna to tilt her head in confusion. She thought about the situation for a brief moment before simply shrugging her shoulders. Oh well, I bet he wants to give me his daughter after seeing how amazing I am. Sure, that's only reasonable. It is. Of course, it's not. Moments later, Ipponmatsu returned with a beautifully decorated sword sheath containing a sword with a black handle and golden decoration. This sword's name is Yubashiri. It's one of the 50 skillful great swords and the best weapon I have in my shop. I've been searching for a long time for someone worthy of using this sword, and you are the most skilled swordsman I have ever seen. My heart aches to give the Yubashiri to someone who doesn't specialize in it, but I think you are the best person to carry on its legacy. I would rather someone carries it, who knows what they are doing, than have it rust away here in my storage room. So, please take it with you and make use of it. Yuna chuckled in amusement when Ipponmatsu mentioned the sword rusting since, after reaching a certain level of quality, it was basically impossible for a sword to rust. Anyway, as soon as Ipponmatsu stopped speaking, Yuna took the Yubashiri and revealed its blade, looking at it with curiosity. Obviously, she had seen better swords made out of all kinds of otherworldly materials in her life, but she had to admit that it was pretty well made. Well, I would have been satisfied with something decent to play around with, but since I get something good for free, I won't complain, Tilda. Very well. My name will be known all over the world soon anyway, so I might as well carry a famous sword with me. Hearing Yuna's declaration, Ipponmatsu was briefly stunned before a wide grin appeared on his face. Frankly, if Yuna had been happy to stay in the East Blue, he would have been quite disappointed. However, since she claimed she would be renowned all over the world, it could only mean one thing. The Grand Line, right? Yuna grinned widely as she fastened her new sword to her right side while getting a feel for having additional weight attached to her side. That's right. What's the point of being strong if you can't even travel the world and make a huge harem? Harem? Yep, the biggest there has ever been. Hearing Yuna's words, Ipponmatsu couldn't help but groan in displeasure, as he had just given away his most prized possession to a pervert. However, as ridiculous a dream as Yuna might have, there was no doubt that she had to travel the world and make a name for herself to get what she wanted. If Ipponmatsu had to choose between someone with no great ambition and someone with a great one that was perverted, he would still choose to give the Yubashiri to the second person. Saya really was hoping you would aim for something more normal, but I guess it can't be helped. Ma, no worries. For someone like me, becoming the world's strongest is just part of the course. Ipponmatsu couldn't help but shiver a little as he saw nothing but pure confidence radiating out of Yuna's eyes as she made such a grand statement casually. Although he still wasn't sure what he was supposed to think about Yuna's ambition to create a harem, at the very least, he took getting stronger seriously, which pacified him at least a little. A few minutes later, Yuna left Ipponmatsu's shop with two new swords hanging on her left and right side. Although the second sword she got couldn't compare to the Yubashiri, it was at least of decent quality, satisfying Yuna. The moment she left the shop, she briefly saw Zoro running in yet another random alley, but after a few seconds, Yuna decided that she hadn't seen anything and kept moving. Well, there are lots of things to do. First of all, I need more information about this world in general. The snippets Nomi gave me were helpful, but I want to have more than a rough idea about this world before I do anything big. That sounds surprisingly reasonable. That being said, let's break into this town's marine base and steal as much information as we can. I'll take back my previous statement. While we are at it, I might as well steal some money from them to get over the rounds. Yeah, I admit that statement was pretty silly. Maybe I should kidnap a few important people as well. People like that should have plenty of important information, right? Could you stop? Sorry, did you say something, Kurama? No, I just temporarily forgot how much of a nutcase you are. Oh? How do you manage to still forget about that after all these years? I honestly have no clue. While Yuna and Kurama were chatting, a familiar figure approached the duo. It was Tashigi, who just finished buying a few things and was now here to get her sword back, which she gave to Ipponmatsu for maintenance. Oh? If it isn't Yuna. What a coincidence that I met you here, Aga. Before Tashigi could finish speaking, her gaze was drawn to the sword hanging on Yuna's side. She took a closer look while squinting her eyes before taking out a small book and rifling through it. Moments later, she switched her gaze from the book towards Yuna with an excited expression, while her eyes turned into stars due to excitement. That's Yubashiri, right? It's one of the 50 skillful grade swords. It's a really famous sword and can't even be bought for millions of belly. Hearing Tashigi's excited tone, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she drew her sword, showing the blade to Tashigi. That's right. You have good eyes, Tashigi. Tashigi looked at the blade in front of her in fascination, resisting the impulse to snatch it away from Yuna and give it a closer look. Obviously, even if she did that, she wouldn't keep it, but it would still be impolite to just snatch someone's weapon away like that. After around a minute of Tashigi inspecting Yuna's sword from every possible angle, Tashigi realized what she was doing as her cheeks became slightly pink. Sorry for staring like that. I can't help myself but get excited whenever I see a famous sword. Ma, no worries. You can stare at my sword as much as you want. I wouldn't even mind if you were to touch it. Hell, you can even give it a lick or a suck if you want to. A lick? A suck? While Tashigi was somewhat confused due to Yuna's words, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement as her innuendo flew over the young woman's head. So pure and innocent, Tilda. We haven't even been here for a full day, and you are already causing this world's morals to rot. My, thank you for the compliment, Tilda. That you know what? Sure, whatever. You're welcome. As Yuna and Kurama had a brief conversation, Tashigi continued gushing about this world's famous sword with an excited expression on her face. You know, it's my dream to collect all the famous swords in the world. There are so many of them that are being wielded by filthy pirates, which I really can't stand. Aren't those swords crying due to being held by evil? After Tashigi finished speaking, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement while shaking her head in denial. You got something wrong there, Tashigi. Something wrong? What do you mean? Swords don't care whether they are held by evil people or good people. All a sword wants is to serve its purpose. The reason they were created. As Yuna resumed speaking, Yuna yet again showed off a Yubashiri. Yubashiri. Snow Chaser. This sword was made to hunt. Chasing after a target and cutting it down, that is this sword's purpose. Whether the people it hunts are good or evil, it couldn't care less. Tashiko got into a daze the moment Yuna finished speaking, while the sword Yuna was holding seemed to hum in satisfaction. However, before Tashigi could react to Yuna's words, Yuna had already resumed speaking. Besides that, what makes you think that only pirates are the bad guys? Marines can be just as evil as pirates, if not even more evil. Although Tashigi was still somewhat confused about Yuna's words, thinking about the purpose of her own blade named Shiga, but the moment Yuna claimed that Marines could be just as bad or even worse than pirates, she couldn't help but get angry. There is no way Marines could be like that. Seeing the anger on Tashigi's face, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she petted her head as if she was a child. Matilda, your innocence is quite cute. I like it. However, Tashigi slapped Yuna's hand away, still glaring at her, giving Yuna the image of a small cat hissing at her. Hee, very well. How about this, then? Let's have a little bet. A bet? Yep. If you win the bet, I'll give you my Yubashiri, no questions asked. Hearing that Yuna would give her Yubashiri to her, Tashigi's eyes widened in shock, as she didn't expect Yuna to give away such a great sword willingly. Simultaneously, she could help but be on guard about what Yuna wanted from her in return. And if I win, then you have to share a kiss with Matilda. A KK kiss. Obviously, Tashigi was shocked by that kind of price. On the one hand, only having to bet a simple kiss for the chance to get one of the skilled swords was incredible, but on the other hand, the only people Tashigi had ever kissed were her parents, so she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Obviously aware of Tashigi's embarrassment, Yuna continued talking as if she didn't notice anything. Yep. How about this? I'm sure you will enter the Grand Line at some point, as the longer Marines are in office, the stronger they become and the more dangerous areas they are assigned to. So, after entering the Grand Line, if no event happened that made you doubt the Marines might not be as great as you think they are within 1 year, then it's your win. Otherwise, it's mine. Naturally, there was no way for Yuna to know whether something like that would happen or not, but she honestly didn't care too much. She never planned to use the Yubashiri as her main weapon, so the worst-case scenario of this bet was that Yuna wouldn't gain anything. I'm surprised that you are satisfied with a kiss. This tongue of mine that is dexterous enough to untie complex knots is all I need to make women fall for me. I see, yet again, the trust in your own degeneracy is uncontested. I wonder if there are any interesting devil fruits I could make use of tilde. Luffy's fruit would have been nice, but I guess that's taken tilde mhh tilde. I wonder if there is a tentacle fruit. Fucking degenerate. Yep, but you already knew that tilde. Raiding a marine base. In the end, Tashigi decided to accept the bet with flushed cheeks, causing Yuna to chuckle in amusement while leaving after blowing Tashigi a kiss, making her blush even harder. Well, what a good start for this new adventure, tilde. I'll just pretend that good mood comes from getting a good sword. Sure, if that makes you feel better. As Yuna continued walking, searching for certain jobs, she mentally went through a list of things she should properly acquire before she started traveling. Well, since this world seems to be heavily reliant on sea travel to get around, I guess I'll need to either get a few books on navigation or directly get myself a navigator. A female one, obviously. Well, traveling with the Straw Hats is an option as well, as it is a rather interesting group, but in the end, I feel like that captain is too unreliable. Well, what else do I need? Obviously, I need to get my hands on all kinds of tools for survival. Well, I could use my eyes for most things, but let's do this properly. Anyway, food and water are obviously a must-have, and I should get a map of this area as well. Maybe I can even get one of the Grand Line. Oh well, we'll see about that. Phew, so much to do. It makes me miss the shadow clone jutsu. Oh well, I'll do them after that priority. That being said, the most important thing first, let's get materials to bake a cake. Size so many sentences with reasonable content, and all of that gets executed at the end. Did you say something, Kurama? Nah, just lamenting my fate. Fuck fate. Yeah, I know. As Yuna methodically moved through the city, buying everything she needed for further travel, she came by a stall that sold all kinds of random curiosities. Well, rather than curiosities, most of the things sold should probably rather called garbage, but Yuna noticed something that drew her curiosity. This sea conch is interesting, Tilda. It is? The merchant sitting at the stall immediately noticed Yuna approaching his stall, causing him to put on a kind smile while preparing to scam someone. Hey uncle, this conch looks really cool, I want to use it for decoration. How much is it? Hearing Yuna's words, the stall owner deflated. He had hoped that Yuna had read the words tone dial the conch was labeled with and got curious, but in the end, she was only interested because it looked good. Damn, if she isn't interested in the actual function of it, then I won't be able to inflate the price too much. Hee, you have a good eye, young lady. However, this isn't just some decorative object. This is a mythical object from the Grand Line that can record and play sounds. The moment the shopkeeper said the function, Yuna seemed to deflate a little, which he obviously noticed. Okay. So it can play sounds, interesting. Seeing that Yuna was close to losing interest, the shopkeeper quickly continued his marketing pitch. Now, don't lose interest just yet. As I've said, this is from the Grand Line and is incredibly unique. This is probably the only tone dial in the East Blue. How about this? I will make that decision easier for you and sell it to you at a discount. I only want 1,000,000 belly for it. Okay. Huh. Before the merchant could react, the tone dial was no longer in his hand and was instead replaced with 10,000 belly banknotes. The only thing that remained of Yuna was a speck of her blue and red hair vanishing in the distance. Noticing how easily Yuna handed over the money, he could only curse again and again. It was clear that he could have asked for significantly more money, considering how easily Yuna accepted the price he was asking for. Damn it, I could have gotten much more. Oh well, I still made quite a good profit. Meanwhile, Yuna was walking away while inspecting the tone dial with interest. She didn't buy it for its function but for the technology it worked on. She simply got curious about how this thing worked. Frankly, she was pretty sure that she paid more than necessary, but she couldn't care less. If she was out of money, she could just go and find some more. For now, she stowed away the tone dial for later use and continued traveling the city, quickly reaching her destination, the city's local Marine base. Well, time to join the Marines, Tilda. Sure. I bet you will do great with them. Hee, jokes aside, if I were to actually join, how long do you think it would take for me to be fired? 5 seconds. That long? I took into consideration how long it would take for your superior to digest whatever you would have said to them. Oh? Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, around 5 minutes later. Spider Yuna does whatever a Spider Yuna does, Tilda. Which mainly consists of degenerate stuff. Yuna was currently crawling along the ceiling of a corridor within the Marine base. She did so by freezing and unfreezing her fingertips to the ceiling. She continued moving around, quickly penetrating deeper and deeper into the Marine base, and while she was doing so, some kind of commotion was started, making the Marine base much more chaotic. Quickly. Straw Hat Luffy has been seen climbing the scaffold in the center square. He sure is a troublemaker, Tilda. Now that he has a bounty, one might reasonably argue that he should stay low-key, but it seems like he had other thoughts. Well, it's not like I can talk, as I would probably do the same, Tilda. As she continued crawling, she briefly paused as she suddenly felt a gaze on her, confusing her a little as she couldn't feel any human presence around her. Looking toward the direction where she felt the gaze from, she tilted her head in confusion when she noticed who was watching her. A snail. What the hell? I mean, I guess it must have crawled in here, right? Yeah, but there is something off about this snail. There she is, on the ceiling. Get her. Her. I've been found. How? Yuna quickly detached herself from the ceiling and started running away from the mob of Marines chasing after her, and as she was running, she quickly noticed that there were snails spread all over the place, and the deeper she went into the Marine base, the more there were. These snails are for monitoring. Damn it, Nomi, tell me something like this. Considering how the snails were placed and how they were spread all over the ceiling, Yuna didn't take long to understand what they were for. The sea conch that could play sounds already caught her off guard, but now there were even snails that replaced cameras. What was going on in this place? Moments later, she reached a highly guarded room filled to the brim with people, protecting a huge metal door while the mob of Marines was still chasing after Yuna. Obviously, she could just take them out but decided not to bother with them so far. Oh no, seems like I walked into a trap, Tilda. Sai, why do you always need to do that? Haven't I already said that before? If someone sets a trap for you, it's only common courtesy to walk straight in, Tilda. Yeah, you mentioned that before. Stop right there. Who are you and what are you doing here? While Yuna and Kurama were chatting, one of the Marines stepped forward and started questioning Yuna while all the others raised their guns and pointed them at her. Ma, don't mind me. I'm Yuna and I'm just here to steal a bunch of stuff. You are dismissed and can return to your post, Tilda. Like hell. Chuckled in amusement due to the Marine's reaction, Yuna lowered her stance while putting her hands on her two swords. Guess it can't be helped. I'll need to get a little rough. Stop. If you draw those swords, we will shoot you. Surrender peacefully. Although she heard him speak, Yuna couldn't care less and drew her two blades, putting the Marine in front of her on guard instantly. You leave us no choice. Fire. Dozens of guns fired simultaneously, raining bullets down on Yuna from all sides. However, Yuna only smiled leisurely as she readied her blade. Two-sword style, strolling through the rain. What's with the short name? Well, I'm just swinging these two swords around a little, that's not worthy of a proper name, Tilda. Finished with a brief conversation with Kurama, Yuna started swinging her swords, splitting the first bullet that was about to hit her perfectly in half. Having already scanned which bullets she had to cut and which wouldn't hit her, Yuna continued moving her hands, slicing through every bullet coming her way while ignoring those that didn't matter. The bullet barrage ended quickly, as every Marine had only fired a single shot. Seeing Yuna completely unharmed after that bullet rain, the leading Marine couldn't help but gulp, realizing that he might have bitten off more than he could chew. Seconds passed as an awkward silence reigned in the room that was only broken after the leading Marine realized the situation. Someone get Captain Smoker as fast as possible. Ensign White, see, Captain Smoker isn't in the base right now. He is after Straw Hat Luffy. What? Shit. While the Marines had an internal breakdown, Yuna started leisurely humming as she decided not to wait any longer. Two-sword style. Hearing Yuna was about to use another technique, Ensign White couldn't help but panic a little as he hastily gave out more commands. Another volley. Shoot. And you, get Captain Smoker here. Divine Sex Art's third sword form. An insane grin split Yuna's face in half as she suddenly vanished from her position, easily evading all the bullets shot at her. What? Forced instant striptease. Sick. Yuna reappeared behind the gathered Marines and resheathed her two swords with a satisfying click, and the moment she did so, the Marines exploded. No, their clothes exploded as they were all cut into tiny pieces, leaving all of them naked while simultaneously, their guns broke apart and the giant metal door was cut open, leaving everyone dumbfounded. While cries of shame rang through the room and Yuna leisurely walked inside what she assumed to be the Marine base's treasure vault, Ensign White was utterly dumbfounded. What the FCK was that? Frankly, he couldn't even comprehend what he had just witnessed. Obviously, blocking that bullet rain was already an incredible feat, but he couldn't even fathom what he was supposed to think about what he had just witnessed. Additionally, what were they even supposed to do right now? Fight naked using their fists? No, that was obviously a bad idea. After all, Yuna had cut their weapons and clothes apart even while they were fully equipped. It was rather obvious that the only reason they weren't cut apart was due to Yuna not wanting to kill them. Thinking about all these things, he quickly made a decision. Retreat. Don't block her path and retreat. Get Captain Smoker here as soon as possible. While the group of naked Marines was running away, Yuna had already found a decently sized bag and had put quite a bit of money inside it. Well, that should be enough for now. This base is protecting this town, so I don't want to push them into utter poverty, after all. So, let's look for books, charts, and other stuff about the Grand Line now, Tilda. Leaving the vault, Yuna leisurely walked through the Marine base, no longer needing to hide due to the Marines not wanting to get into a conflict with her. Neither of them knew how strong she actually was, but it was clear that a normal human could not hurt her easily, even if they had a gun. So, their only option was to wait for the arrival of Captain Smoller. Unfortunately for them, Yuna quickly reached the room she assumed to be assigned to the highest-ranked person in the base, and after searching through it, finding all kinds of interesting-looking books, she was about to leave but briefly paused due to her attention being attracted by a picture hanging on the wall. Well, it's the oldest trick in the book, but let's give it a look, Tilda. She approached the picture and took it off the wall, exposing a small metal door, causing her to chuckle in amusement. I knew it, Tilda. Smiling lightly, she swiftly cut through the iron, allowing her access to what was inside. However, seeing the content of the safe, she couldn't help but frown. What the hell is this? She removed a small box from the safe and opened it, revealing a weird device that looked like it could be strapped to someone's arm. It had a glass dome on it, and inside said glass dome was a small needle that was currently pointing somewhere. I would guess that this is a compass, but what's with the weird design? Yuna pondered the situation a little longer before simply shrugging her shoulder. Since this weird device was within a safe, it probably is either worth a lot or quite important, so she might as well take it, right? Tossing the device into the bag she was carrying, Yuna decided it was time to leave and opened the window before casually jumping out of it, landing safely on the ground. Well, those snails can, at the very least, be used as monitoring devices, but I can't be certain if they have a recording feature as well, so I guess I should leave this place for now. I'll probably get a bounty, but that was more or less inevitable in the first place. Should I travel with the Straw Hats a while longer? Oh? What makes you think they would be fine with that? Well, Nomi seems to more or less wear the pants on that ship, and she seems to be quite greedy, so I'll just give her some money, and everything should work out. Bribery, huh? It's been a while. I know, right? After reaching a certain level of power, coercion is usually enough to get by, so it can't be helped that using bribery to get what I want gets rarer and rarer. While walking away from the Marine base, Yuna noticed that a few Marines were trying to follow her, probably to report her position to that Captain Smoker guy Yuna had heard about, but Yuna wasn't too interested in meeting him, so after taking a turn around the corner, she easily managed to slip away from the Marine surveillance. Amateurs. Obviously, compared to the shinobi in her second life, a bunch of Marines that weren't trained in tracking people had no chance of actually following her, so she slipped her away easily. Well, I guess I'll take a look at how Luffy is doing, and then I'll be on my way. Minutes later, Yuna arrived at the place where Roger was executed a long time ago, and seeing the chaos that was going on there, she couldn't help but smile wryly. First of all, Luffy somehow managed to get himself trapped inside the pillory on the scaffold in the center of the large open place. Next, Zoro and Sanji were currently fighting a huge horde of pirates, who mostly had some kind of makeup decorating their faces. Additionally, Yuna could feel a bunch of Marines hiding all over the place, ready to capture everyone present as soon as the opportunity came. Finally, there was a guy dressed like a clown next to Luffy, who clearly intended to execute Luffy. Frankly, Yuna's next action was obvious. Hello, beautiful lady. I would like to invite you to dinner. Slipping through the crowded pirates, Yuna easily approached a beautiful-looking woman with long black hair carrying a huge iron mace and affectionately took her hand. I can't slip out of your grasp. Hee, of course not. If I see a beautiful woman, I simply can't let them go, Tilda. Alvida, the woman whose hand Yuna was currently holding, couldn't help but be dumbfounded as she had eaten the smooth fruit, allowing her skin to be so smooth that everything just slipped off it. However, for some reason, Yuna's hands weren't slipping off of her at all, firmly holding her own hands. What is even going on? Unfortunately, Yuna didn't have any more time to flirt, as she noticed that the weird-looking clown was about to cut off Luffy's head, so she was about to throw her sword at him to block the attack when her gaze shifted toward the sky. Something is coming. There is intent hidden in the weather. I don't understand exactly what's going on, but someone wants to save Luffy using the weather. Frankly, it was a rather weird feeling, but Yuna was certain that something was about to happen. She was only in this world for a few hours, but if she had to make a guess, she could only guess that some kind of devil fruit was involved. The clown's blade descended, and while that happened, a wide smile appeared on Luffy's face, shocking even Yuna. "Sorry guys, I'm dead tilde." Boom. The moment those words left his mouth, lightning hit the blade that was about to cut off his head, saving his life. However, Yuna couldn't give a shit about that, as she was still focused on the supposedly last moment of Luffy's life. He didn't know that he would be saved by lightning. He genuinely thought that his life was about to end, and the only thing he did was smile. The atmosphere around Yuna changed as her face twisted into a frankly disgusting smile, causing Alvida to instinctively take a step away from Yuna. Interesting tilde. Leaving large town. Interesting tilde. Witnessing how Luffy was smiling broadly despite being about to die, that was the only word Yuna could say. In her long life, she had met quite a few people, men, that could raise her interest, and Luffy had just entered that list of people. Obviously, she wasn't romantically interested in him, but just like Rock Lee in her previous life, she now considered Luffy an interesting character. Those that smile when they are about to die rarely have a boring life. I might actually join the Straw Hat Pirates just to witness the messes they will create all over the world tilde. I pity them, but whatever. Why did that idiot smile just now? Well, I haven't known Luffy for long, so I could be wrong, but if I had to guess, then I would assume that there are two reasons. The first one is that he was happy he would die in the same place and the same way as the one he was chasing after, the Pirate King, Gold Roger. MHH. Gold Roger. Hee hee, how about Gold D Roger, ha ha ha. Stop messing around. Just because you met one guy with D for his middle name doesn't mean they are common. Hee hee, I bet Roger gave the Marines quite a lot of his D, hee hee tilde. Cough anyway. The second reason for Luffy smiling probably was that he died chasing after his drain. He tried, gave his best, and failed. However, throughout the journey, he had a lot of fun, so rather than mourning his failure, he remembered all the fun he had. In other words, he is crazy. Yep, completely bonkers. While the duo was chatting, Luffy got up from the rubble of the execution platform and dusted himself off. Despite being hit by lightning, he was perfectly fine due to the nature of his rubber body. He had a brief conversation with Zoro and Sanji, who had managed to reach Luffy by now, and following that, all three started fleeing the plaza while Marines started flooding in. As the trio was running away and fighting of Marines, Luffy noticed Yuna not standing too far away, still caressing Alvida's hand, who was currently still dumbfounded due to how Luffy survived. Oi, Yuna. Idiot, don't drag her into this. Straw Hat Luffy called that woman's name, she must be part of the crew. Capture her as well. Oops, seems like I got a target on me tilde. Sorry, Alvida, let's continue this conversation at a later time tilde. After Luffy called her name, Zoro scolded him for drawing attention to Yuna, but it was already too late as the surrounding Marines had already noticed her, prompting her to leave as well. Yuna quickly caught up to Luffy's little group of three, where Luffy laughed sheepishly while a bump grew on his head. Shishishi, sorry about that, Yuna. Ma, it's fine. I already raided the local Marine base anyway, so becoming a pirate is pretty much inevitable. You did what? Hee tilde, my hand slipped and I accidentally plundered them. Hee hee, whoops tilde. That's not a slip of the hand. Yuna gave the trio a thumbs up for being perfectly synchronized before noticing a familiar woman block the path. Yuna. So you were a pirate? Oh? If it isn't little Tashigi. I'll deal with her and you three can keep going. Oh. While Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji kept running toward the port where the Maerry was anchored, Yuna walked toward Tashigi, who had already drawn her blade. I can't believe you were a pirate. Is that why you acted like that? You wanted to make fun of me? To humiliate me when we meet again? Die. While swinging down her sword in anger, Yuna increased her pace and arrived in front of Tashigi far faster than Tashigi had anticipated, allowing Yuna to stop the swing before it could even start. She held Tashigi's arms above her head with one arm while using some force to make Tashigi trip, ultimately pressing her against a nearby wall with her body. Splatter. Suddenly, blood splattered to the ground due to it. Sanji getting a nosebleed due to seeing two women pressing their breasts together. Yuna saw that from the corner of her eyes and chuckled in amusement while raising Tashigi's chin with her hand, forcing her to meet Yuna's eyes while their noses were almost touching. Poor little girl, you assume so much about this world, and yet you know so little, she said while only having reached this world a few hours ago. Well, I might not know much about this world, but I have extensive knowledge about human nature. While, weirdly enough, really acting like a normal human would. Meh, all these people are always going for that weird common sense stuff. I never got that. Indeed, you don't have common sense. What are you talking about? What is there to know about pirates? They rape. They pillage. They murder. Obviously, pirates are horrible people and need to be captured. Hearing Tashigi's desperate yells, Yuna only shook her head while getting even closer to Tashigi's face, allowing Yuna to whisper into her ear. The world is wide, Tashigi. I know it's easier to see everything in black and white, but that is not how the world really is. Someday, your current worldview will collapse, shaking your mindset greatly. I hope your mind stays strong in those desperate times, after all. A shiver went through Tashigi's spine as Yuna breathed down her neck. However, suddenly, Yuna stopped talking and drew back a little, allowing the duo's eyes to meet again while making it possible for Tashigi to see Yuna's wide smile as she continued talking. I still need to cash in that kiss tilde. Hearing Yuna's words, Tashigi's face flushed a little as she remembered the bet she had made with Yuna, already regretting it a little. Chuckling in amusement, Yuna took a step away from Tashigi while letting go of her hands, allowing her to fall weakly to her knees. Yuna was just about to leave, but before she could do so, she felt Tashigi pulling on her clothes. Why are you treating me like this? Aren't we enemies? Why do you insist on humiliating me like this? Why don't you just kill me? Am I too weak to be seen as a threat? As Tashigi's voice grew increasingly desperate and angry, Yuna could only scratch her head with a wry smile on her face. It took Tashigi a while to calm down, and as soon as she did, Yuna told her the reason why she acted like she did. Well, you still haven't figured that out. Quite the late bloomer, huh? Well, I do what I do because I think you are cute. I don't need more reasons than that. A. Naturally, Tashigi was briefly stunned when Yuna gave her such a basic answer before her cheeks flushed red again. See cute. Seeing the utter confusion on Tashigi's face, Yuna decided it was time to go, and after blowing Tashigi a kiss, she quickly rushed away, leaving a dumbfounded Tashigi behind. She increased her pace, hoping to quickly catch up with Luffy and his group, but after only running for a short time, she could already see them. Currently, Zoro and Sanji tried to dig themselves out of the rubble of a collapsed building while Luffy was on the ground with a white-haired man smoking 2 cigars sitting on his back. Well, let me guess, smoker. What came first? The name or the addiction? How philosophical. Although she was talking with Kurama, Yuna didn't slow down and would be reaching Smoker soon. Smoker was currently drawing the weapon on his back, but at her current pace, Yuna was certain she would make it in time. HMPH, looks like your luck ends here. Or not. Suddenly, a male and a female voice spoke, and while a cloaked figure suddenly appeared behind Smoke and grabbed the hand that was about to draw Smoker's jitty, the sole of a foot smashed into Smoker's face, sending him flying away, causing the cloaked figure to let go of the arm he was holding. MHH, was that Haki? No, it felt a little similar, but it wasn't. What an interesting person. While the cloaked man inspected Yuna, she did the same to him, eyeing him from head to toe. After doing so for a few silent seconds, she grabbed Luffy by the gruff of his clothes and dragged him away. Strong but not an enemy. Don't know who you are, but thanks for trying to help. CYA later tilde. As Yuna dragged Luffy away, the cloaked figure looked at her back and stroked his chin in curiosity. Briefly. Very briefly, I felt an incredibly dense battle thirst leaking out of her. Seems like Luffy made quite an interesting comrade. Dragon. Why do you help them escape? After Yuna and Dragon's brief interaction, Smoker managed to dig himself out of the wall Yuna had kicked him into and immediately recognized Dragon, the leader of the Revolutionary Army and the world's most wanted man. Hearing Smoker's words, a grin appeared on Dragon's face as thunder ominously rumbled in the sky. What reason do you have to stop a man from setting sail? Hearing Dragon's answer, Smoker gritted his teeth in anger while knowing exactly why he asked such a question and what it implied. The individual that reported Luffy was Nezumi, a marine Smoker wouldn't even want to be in the same room with due to how disgusted he was by his presence. In conclusion, there was a high chance that Luffy had done nothing to earn himself such a high bounty. However, so what? Marines capture pirates, that's the obvious thing to do. Yes, that is how it has been for a long time now. However, the winds of revolution are blowing worldwide, and no one knows how the world will change during the coming storms. Finished saying what he wanted to say, Dragon vanished from Smoker's perception, causing Smoker to grit his teeth in anger. Shit. I won't allow Straw Hat to get away from me. I'll follow him to the Grand Line and capture him myself. As these thoughts passed through his mind, he couldn't help but wince while holding the cheek Yuna had previously kicked. Haki. No, she must have been able to hit me because Dragon was using Haki to hold my own. Being satisfied with that explanation, Smoker nodded his head and started moving back to the island's marine base. While he was walking, he met Tashigi, who was sitting on the ground and leaning her back against a wall with a confused expression on her face. What are you doing here? Smoker. Sorry, a lot of things happened and I still need to work through them. Hearing Tashigi's answer, Smoker only huffed out some air in acknowledgement. After all, he wasn't in a great mental state right now, either. Whatever, the Straw Hats got away, and I'll follow them to the Grand Line. What? Initially, Tashigi was shocked due to Smoker's announcement, but her mood changed quickly as determination flared in her eyes. I'm coming as well. Next time I meet Yuna, I won't be so easily overpowered as I did today. Smoker nodded in approval as the duo made their way back to their marine base, but while they were walking, a flustered person approached them. Initially, Smoker assumed it to be a civilian, but after giving it a closer look, he noticed it was actually a marine. Why is he in civilian clothes? Captain Smoke. I've finally found you. During your absence, someone attacked our marine base and wreaked havoc there. No one was able to stop her. What? Obviously, the duo was shocked that someone would actually dare to attack a marine base, so they quickly sped up to get there further while the marine that reported to them tried to keep up. Tell me what happened. How many were injured? Are there any causalities? Hearing Smoker's question, the young man couldn't help but awkwardly scratch his head. Cough. Well, there are no injuries and no causalities. Huh. Yet again, Smoker and Tashigi reacted similarly as they looked at the young marine in bewilderment. What exactly happened? Well, a single woman managed to sneak deep into our base without being noticed, but fortunately, a Den Mushi managed to spot her. Since the last batch of prisoners was already sent away, we rightfully assumed that she was aiming for our funds, so we prepared a trap for her and gathered many people. We managed to trap her, but unfortunately, we vastly underestimated her capabilities. Despite being shot at by dozens of people, she calmly cut through every bullet approaching her without us being able to land a single hit. Following that display of incredible swordsmanship, she vanished from her position, and before we understood what was going on, all the clothes we were wearing were cut open with surgical precision, leaving not a single scratch on our skin. Hearing the Marine's explanation, Smoker and Tashigi could only look at him dumbfounded. Their first thought was that he was simply lying, but what would be the point of making up such a ridiculous report? After all, there apparently were dozens of people present to testify whether the report was true or not. Can there really be someone that skilled with the sword in this world? However, he quickly realized that there was no point in thinking about it. After all, what did he know about the monsters living in the later parts of the Grand Line and swordsmanship in general? Maybe reaching such a level of skill and precision wasn't uncommon in those places. In the end, he could only discard those thoughts and concentrate on the now. The Straw Hat Pirates were the first crew that managed to get away from him, so he would just concentrate on redeeming himself by going after them. Tashigi, on the other hand, had slightly different thoughts, so she couldn't help but ask the question that had bothered her since she heard that the intruder had been a woman. What did that woman look like? Do we have a name? Realizing that he had forgotten to report about those details, the Marine coughed awkwardly before resuming his report. Yes, the invader was a woman with flashy blue and red hair. She introduced herself as Yuna. Hearing the intruder's identity, Tashigi's guess that it was Yuna was confirmed, causing her frown to deepen. On one hand, she does something evil and attacks a Marine base, and on the other, she hurts not a single soul during that attack. Did she want to teach me something by doing this? Why did she cut their clothes? Why did she do that? Of course, Tashigi was completely overthinking the situation. The only reason why Yuna raided the Marine base was because she assumed that she would get something out of it. She didn't hurt anybody because there was no difference whether she did or didn't, and finally, she cut everybody's clothes simply because she found it funny. A few minutes passed, and by now, Smoker had assessed the damage and was back in his office. Although Yuna had stolen some money, the damage wasn't as bad as Smoker had assumed it would be. Well, Yuna was only a single person, so the amount she could carry obviously was limited if she wanted to stay mobile. Shaking his head at these thoughts, he walked towards one of the pictures on the wall and removed it, revealing a small safe. He quickly opened it and removed the only object inside, a lock pose, the device that made it possible to navigate the Grand Line. MHH. I feel like this looks a little different, but I could be wrong. I haven't taken this thing out for years, so I guess I just remembered wrongly. Not thinking too deeply about it, Smoker quickly fastened the decide to his wrist and gave it another look. No matter how he looked at it, this looked lit. Splat. Out of nowhere, a cake hit him in the face, breaking off his train of thought while dumbfounding him greatly. What the fuck? Joining the crew. Meanwhile, Yuna, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji were running through Log Town toward where they anchored the Going Maerry. While running, Zoro somehow decided to take a turn and ran into a random alley, but before he could get far, Luffy's hand stretched and went after him, dragging him in the right direction. While they were running, Yuna secretly pulled out the tone dial she previously purchased and prepared to activate it without anybody noticing. Hey, Luffy, can you say Usopp is an idiot? Why? Hee, just for me, Tilda. Okay, Tilda, Usopp is an idiot. While Luffy simple-mindedly did as Yuna asked him to do, Zoro and Sanji briefly held eye contact before dismissing this matter. They were pretty certain that Yuna was planning something, but since they had no clue what it was, they wouldn't intervene. After all, the one being lured into a trap was Luffy and not them. Hee, this one will come in handy for sure, Tilda. The group of four continued running and quickly reached the Going Maerry. After punting away a weirdo and a large lion that appeared to be trying to light the Maerry on fire with a matchstick despite the heavy rain currently covering Log Town, they reached the deck and quickly set sail. While everyone was happy that they got away safely, and Nami and Usopp wondered why Yuna was with them again, Yuna opened her mouth and started speaking. So, anyway, I'll be joining the crew, Tilda. Huh? Yes, Yuna CHWAN. Snore. Sigh, what a way to start a conversation. While Luffy and Usopp were surprised by Yuna's words, Sanji instantly had hearts in his eyes as he started fawning over Yuna. Zoro didn't comment, as he had already managed to fall asleep after about 3 seconds of reaching the deck. Finally, Nami couldn't help but facepalm due to Yuna's weird approach to starting a conversation. MHH tilde Y. The first one to resume speaking after the initial reaction was Luffy, who tilted his head in confusion. Frankly, he put little thought into who joined his crew, sometimes asking weirdos to do so just because he found them interesting. However, at the end of the day, he always picked people that would fit in well. He couldn't even see a reason why Yuna joining felt weird to him, but he just had a feeling in the back of his head that Yuna was different from his other crewmates. If Luffy had been better at understanding his own thoughts and instincts, he would have probably been able to discern why he thought that Yuna was different from the others. Unlike his other crewmates, she would never reach the point where she would be willing to sacrifice her life for the sake of Luffy's, of the captain's drain. Yuna could more or less understand why Luffy was reluctant to allow her on board permanently, but she already knew how to convince Luffy. No need to think too deeply about this, Luffy. After all, me joining this crew would give you a massive benefit due to one of the skills I have. MHH. Skills. You mean that skill to make women come? Ignoring Nomi, who was currently smacking the back of his head for reasons he didn't understand, Luffy tilted his head in confusion, but seconds later, he seemed to have come to a conclusion, causing him to resume speaking with stars in his eyes. Are you a musician? While the rest of the crew was facepalming, Yuna chuckled in amusement and raised her hand. No, not really, but I can do this. The moment Yuna stopped speaking, ice started appearing on the palm of her hand, quickly forming into a football-sized ball of ice. Seeing the ice ball, Luffy had question marks above his head, while the rest of the crew was dumbfounded by what Yuna just did. A devil fruit. However, Yuna didn't sink into the sea when we found her. Maybe she ate it while she was in Logue Town. MHH. You can make ice. While Nomi and Usopp were discussing how it was possible for Yuna to create ice, Luffy only looked at the ice ball with little interest. However, the person who had the biggest reaction was actually Sanji, who looked at the ball of ice in wonder, exactly understanding the implications of it. Seeing that Sanji knew where she was going, Yuna smiled lightly while pointing her finger at Sanji. Sanji, explain to your captain why he would want me to become part of his crew. Hearing Yuna's words, everyone's eyes landed on Sanji, who was delighted that another woman joining the crew was pretty much inevitable by now. So, taking a drag of the cigarette he was smoking, he started speaking. Well, first of all, I would like to know how much ice you can create. A basically infinite amount. Although Sanji was somewhat surprised by that, he had more important things to do than to question why Yuna could do something like that. He had to increase the amount of female crewmates no matter what. Luffy, do you still remember how I told you that we can't stock too much fresh meat because it would go bad? The moment Sanji stopped speaking, Luffy's brain activated, attempting to remember what exactly Sanji was talking about, but because this was something that had to do with meat, he quickly managed to remember the conversation. So, Luffy simply nodded his head despite still not understanding what Sanji meant. After all, how could meat go bad? Meat was great. Always. Yeah, I remember you saying that. Great. If Yuna were part of the crew, she could produce ice for us, allowing us to freeze the fresh meat, which would allow us to store much more of it than we are currently doing. Gulp, are you saying that if Yuna were part of our crew, I could eat more meat? Yes. Instantly, the atmosphere around Luffy changed as his eyes turned into bundles of meat around a large bone. In his mind, a scale appeared that had meat on one side and his instincts on the other. Initially, the two sides were balanced, but moments later, more meat descended on the side with the meat, tipping the scales so hard that whatever his instincts were telling him was catapulted out of his mind. He faced Yuna and bowed with a 90-degree angle so hard that a small shockwave was produced. Please join my crew. Seeing Luffy display, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement while helping Luffy up from his position. Now, no need to bow. I'll be joining. Let's have a fun adventure together, Tilda. Haha, yes. Welcome on board, meet Yuna. While Luffy was laughing like an idiot and Yuna considered beating him up, a frown appeared on Nomi's face. Wait a moment, Luffy. I'm against this. We basically don't know anything about Yuna, and she is completely unpredictable, and on top of that, she clearly enjoys messing around. The moment Nomi realized that Yuna would join their crew, Nomi couldn't help but intervene. No matter Yuna's intentions, she clearly was someone who would cause trouble, so Nomi decided to speak up. However, before anyone else could say anything, a sad sniffle echoed over the deck of the Going Maerry, drawing everyone's attention to Yuna, who appeared to wipe a tear out of her eyes. Sniffle, I see, so you don't want me to be part of the crew, Nomi. Oh well, I guess it can't be hurt. I plan to donate all the money I stole from the marine base I raided to the CR. While Yuna was talking, she showed off a back that looked to be filled with something heavy, and before she could finish speaking, Nomi had already appeared in front of her, almost making it look like she teleported, and snatched the bag out of Yuna's hand. Nomi quickly opened the back, and seeing it being filled to the brim with gold and belly, Nomi's eyes turned into the symbol for belly as she looked at Yuna in excitement. Yay, I love you, big sis Tilda. Chuckling in amusement as Nomi rubbed her cheeks against her own, Yuna started patting her head as her gaze landed on Usopp. Well, any complaints? However, Usopp only shook his head while shrugging his shoulders. Well, since Luffy already made the decision, it can't be helped. Welcome on board. Seeing that everyone had accepted Yuna. Well, everyone except for Zoro, who was still asleep, but whatever. Anyway, Luffy couldn't help but get excited due to getting a new crewmate, so he spread his arms and started yelling loudly. All right, another friend joined us. Seeing the wide smile on Luffy's face, everyone else couldn't help but smile as well. However, Luffy's next words instantly caused the expression on Nomi's face to darken. That being said, let's turn around. We need to buy more meat. Ah, beautiful ladies, Tilda, it is me, Sanji, and I have prepared us some snacks. Following Luffy's words, Nomu proceeded to beat him up due to his stupid idea while the door to the interior of the ship opened, revealing Sanji, who had disappeared in the middle of the previous conversation. While he was talking, he moved forward, spinning on one leg while balancing a desk and two chairs on his other leg. Simultaneously, his hands were holding two trays, one filled with a tea set and the other filled with various snacks. He quickly arrived in front of Yuna, setting down the table and two chairs before arranging the tea and snack in front of her. Seeing that, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she sat down on the chair Sanji was moving for her before gesturing to Nomi to leave Luffy alone and sit down as well. Taking a sip of the tea Sanji poured her, Yuna nodded in approval. Nomi, come sit down already. MHH, this tea is really great. Good job, Sanji. Yes, Yuna praised my tea Tilda. Seeing hearts appearing in Sanji's eyes as he was elated due to Yuna praising his tea, Yuna smiled wryly as she noticed Nomi sitting down opposite of her, seemingly already used to Sanji acting like this. Hey! Snacks. Where are my snacks, Sanji? TCH, they are in the kitchen. Go get them yourself. Realizing that Sanji had just served some food to Yuna and Nomi, Luffy's attention was instantly drawn to Sanji. However, unlike how he acted in front of Yuna and Nomi, Sanji clearly cared little about personally serving food to Luffy and only pointed him in the direction of the kitchen, causing Luffy and Usopp to vanish into the interior of the ship. Seeing the duo vanishing with excited expressions on their face, while Sanji might as well have been her servant at this point in time, Yuna couldn't help but gaze at Sanji. Say, Sanji, you do realize that I'm only interested in women, right? No matter how diligently you attend to me, nothing romantic will ever come out of it. To Yuna's surprise, Sanji almost looked offended by Yuna's words as he adjusted his tie and resumed speaking. So what? I'm the love cook Sanji, and I love all beautiful women. Whether they love me back or not, I'll continue attending to beautiful women, no matter what happens. Hearing Sanji's answer, Yuna was briefly stunned before she regained her wits and started slapping Sanji's back hard enough to almost make his knees buckle while laughing out loud. Ha ha ha, very good. That's a manly attitude to have. If you were a woman, I would make you part of my harem, ha ha ha. While Sanji was almost collapsing due to Yuna slapping his back, making him wonder just how much physical strength Yuna actually had, he couldn't help but smile wryly while having no clue how he was supposed to react to Yuna's words. Although he loved women, he certainly didn't want to become one. While these two were interacting, Nomi didn't notice even a sliver of their conversation as she was busy counting the money Yuna had stolen with an eager expression on her face. Hee hee, so much money Tilda, I wonder what I should buy myself with. I mean, what should I buy for the crew? Hee hee, the feeling of having a lot of money and being allowed to spend it is the best Tilda. Meanwhile, a few days later, inside the headquarters of the Marines, a burly man wearing a Marine uniform was sitting behind a desk that was filled with multiple photos. While half of them were blurry, the other half had other problems. As he was inspecting the photos, a scrawny man with a camera stood on the other side of the desk with a lowered head, trying to make himself look as small as possible. An awkward silence continued hovering over the room, and after a deep sigh escaped the Marine's mouth, he raised one of the photos that wasn't blurry and started speaking. So, since whenever we Marines started distributing pornography? The man with the camera lowered his head even further, wanting to argue that the photos weren't that bad, but the moment he raised his head to make that point and saw the photo the Marine was holding, he quickly lowered his head again. In the photo, a young woman with blue and red hair could be seen. She was bent over on all fours, her butt occupying large parts of the photo, while she was giving a peace sign to the camera with a smirk on her face. If it was just that, the Marine might have still accepted the photo, but the problem was that the only thing the woman wore was a pure white bikini that left little to the imagination. It might not be actually pornography, but it was really close. Should we really release a wanted poster with that kind of picture? While the Marine was contemplating what to do, the photographer managed to gather some courage and raised his head to speak. I don't know how this happened. I swear she was fully clothed during every picture I took of her. Hearing the photographer's words, the Marine raised his eyebrows, looking at him in doubt. Is he making excuses? As that thought passed through the Marine's head, he picked up one of the blurry photos and took a closer look. Although it was blurry, making it impossible to use it for a bounty poster, the target of the photo was clearly fully clothed. Did she notice someone was taking photos of her and made sure they were blurry just to sneak after the photographer, secretly steal his camera, and make a bunch of semi-obscene photos? That sounded beyond outrageous. No matter how the Marine thought about it, who would do something like that? And why? Now that I think about it, after facing a large group of Marines, all she did was cut down their clothes without harming a single one of them. Maybe she simply is a degenerate. Unaware of how accurate his assessment was, the Marine only shook his head and dropped the matter. Whatever, I'll just pick the least obscene picture and make that her bounty poster. However, looking at the collection of pictures, each depicting a half-naked smiling woman in a different pose, lying in front of him, he could only sigh again and again. Damn it, picking bounty pictures wasn't supposed to be a hard part of my job. Cultivation in one piece. A few days passed and the Going Maerry was currently sailing toward the entrance of the Grand Line, which, apparently, was a mountain. On the ship's deck, Usopp was tinkering with his slingshots balls he uses as ammunition. He was currently in the process of filling them with Tabasco. At the same time, Luffy was sitting in his favorite spot, the figurehead of the Going Maerry, enjoying the wind, while Zoro was sitting cross-legged on the ground, napping. Finally, Nami and Sanji were below deck, and Yuna was sitting cross-legged on the ground, with her back resting against the ship's mast. After carefully looking around, a smirk appeared on Yuna's face as she secretly took a large conch out of her pocket and pressed its tip. Usopp is an idiot. Hearing Luffy calling him an idiot, Usopp twitched, almost causing some Tabasco to spill before he started glaring at Luffy. Luffy, why did you call me an idiot out of nowhere? What are you talking about, Usopp? Luffy, who was out of the hearing range of the tone dial, looked at Usopp and tilted his head in confusion. I'm talking about you calling me an idiot, you idiot. Ah. Did you just call me an idiot? That's right. Idiot tilde. Stupid. Bastard. Long nose. So what if my nose is long? Short nose. How is that even an insult? While Luffy and Usopp were yelling at each other with their foreheads pressed together and with gritted teeth, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she stealthily stowed away the tone dial with the Usopp is an idiot line recorded on it. Well, that was a fun little play, tilde. Do you want to cause a rift in this crew or something like that? Nah, the bond between those two idiots isn't broken so easily. I idiot tilde. As if they wanted to confirm Yuna's words, Luffy and Usopp were suddenly dancing around the deck, repeatedly chanting the word idiot, to which Yuna could only smile wryly. See? That wasn't even 5 seconds. How do they even reconcile so fast? The power of two idiots bonding together. Being done with her little conversation, Yuna closed her eyes and leaned her head back, allowing it to rest against the ship's mast. However, I have to say, this ship is quite interesting. It's just a sliver, but there is a good chance this ship will awaken its spiritual consciousness soon. Oh? From what I have heard, the crew got the ship only recently. Isn't that really fast? Yep, it's incredibly fast. Well, it hasn't happened yet, so let's see how this works out. While Yuna was contemplating the situation of the ship's consciousness with closed eyes, she heard footsteps approaching her. After briefly listening to how they sounded, Yuna quickly found out who the owner of these footsteps was. Nami, what can I do for you? Have you finally decided to join my harem? Nami was startled that Yuna noticed her approaching without opening her eyes, but when Yuna yet again mentioned her harem, Nami could only roll her eyes at Yuna. Again, I have no interest in joining your harem, and besides that, how did you even know it was me approaching? The sound of your footsteps. You are the lightest person on the ship, so as long as you aren't paying attention to it, your footsteps are the quietest. Hearing Yuna's explanation, Nami couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Although, as a former thief, she could easily discern if someone was walking toward her or away from her through footsteps, pinpointing who it was not something she could do. That's rather impressive. I didn't think something like that was even possible. Have my extraordinary skills finally caused you to fall for me? Nomi rolled her eyes yet again as she continued speaking, totally ignoring what Yuna had just said. Anyway, you are strong, right? Yuna's eyebrows rose and she opened her eyes, meeting Nomi's gaze. Yuna went quiet for a brief moment before shrugging her shoulders. Depends on who I'm facing, but generally speaking, yeah, I'm strong. What about someone like Sanji? Do you think you could win? Being asked even more questions, Yuna briefly remembered the brief glimpses she had seen of Sanji fighting. Following that, Yuna nodded her head with a confident expression on her face. Well, setting aside the fact that I believe Sanji is incapable of attacking women and that I have barely seen him fight, I think I should be able to win against him. Hearing what she wanted to hear, Nomi bit her lip in frustration. What happened in her home village a while ago had been quite the wake-up call for her. Up to a certain point, Nomi had always assumed that fishmen were pretty much invincible. Especially Arlong was someone she couldn't imagine winning against. However, Luffy entered her life and managed to deal with the fishman and with Arlong. While Nomi was confident of defeating one, maybe two, fishmen, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji simply busted into Arlong Park and started beating them left and right. Obviously, they didn't have an easy time, but in the end, they won. While that was already quite a shock for her, she simply dismissed the situation as those three simply being even more monstrous than the fishman. However, suddenly, Nomi's perspective changed yet again with the appearance of Yuna, who easily repelled cannonballs and even had the guts to raid a marine base alone and even succeeded in doing so. Considering she spent her whole life in the East Blue, the weakest sea, Nomi had a very skewed perception about a few things. In this case, the level of strength a woman could reach. The strongest woman in the East Blue Nomi was aware of was Alvida, who had a mere bounty of 5 million belly, elevating her slightly above being a small fry. However, not only was her bounty not that great, she looked rather monstrous as well. If Nomi had to look like that in order to become stronger, then she would rather not do so. However, that was when Yuna appeared in the equation. She clearly still had her feminine features and looked attractive, but at the same time, she possessed strength comparable to people who could easily beat up fishmen. In conclusion, after Yuna joined their crew, Nomi decided to ask her for help to get stronger as well. She was aware that sailing the Grand Line was no joke, so she wanted at least to be able to defend herself. After Nomi finished sorting through her thoughts, a determined expression appeared on her face as her eyes met Yuna's. Please help me get stronger. Seeing the determination and resolve in Nomi's eyes, Yuna nodded in approval, and after pondering how she wanted to answer Nomi, Yuna resumed speaking. Very well, I'll help you. However, you do realize that you actually need to put some work in and that I don't have some kind of secret method that makes you strong without putting in any effort, right? The moment Yuna accepted her request, Nomi's shoulders sagged in relief, but after hearing Yuna's warning, she quickly put a serious expression. Of course. For the sake of my dream, I don't mind going through hardships. Good. In that case, I'll need a drop of your blood first. Blood voluntarily given. Be blood. What in the world do you plan to do with my blood? Well, Tilda, I certainly don't plan to store it for later, to use it in an elaborate ritual to make you my blood slave, allowing me to make you do whatever I want. In this case, whatever I want means sexual activities. Seeing the wretched smile on Yuna's face, Nomi almost instinctively pulled out her 3-part staff and smacked Yuna with it, but she still managed to contain herself, thinking that Yuna was making another bad joke. There is no way that is possible, right? Yes? You are not getting a single drop of my blood. Seeing Nomi's exaggerated reaction, Yuna couldn't help herself but chuckle in amusement. No worries, I'm just messing with you, Nomi. Unsurprisingly, I don't believe you. Yuna, while chuckling lightly, raised her hands in defeat before she resumed talking. I really was just messing with you. I don't need your blood at all. Just sit down in front of me and allow the tension to leave your muscles as you relax your mind. Although Nomi was still on guard due to Yuna's previous words, this time, what she wanted her to do at least didn't seem to be too suspicious. Additionally, she also noticed that over the course of their conversation, the rest of the crew got interested in the duo's conversation. Obviously, every single one of them had at least some interest in getting stronger to beat the storms that were inevitably to come. So, with the reassurance that the rest of the crew was watching, Nami did as Yuna wanted her to, and as soon as she sat down in front of Yuna, she felt a palm touching the place between her shoulders, which didn't bother her. While I do this, try to get a feel for the energy I send into you, and if possible, try to detect the place slightly above your belly button it is attracted to. Nami didn't answer Yuna but did just as she said. Frankly, whatever Yuna was trying to do, Nami felt that it was a rather weird matter, but considering she had seen that there was no doubt about Yuna's strength, she decided to trust her for now. However, what Nami didn't know was that Yuna's current strength actually had very little to do with the method she was showing to Nami. After all, she was currently teaching her the first step toward cultivation, but considering Yuna only arrived here a while ago, she hadn't much of that either. Luckily, the little energy she managed to accumulate since she arrived in this world was enough to guide someone through the first steps of cultivation. Unfortunately, unlike Yuna's previous two worlds, cultivating in this one was rather weird, as the spiritual or natural energy, or whatever one wanted to call it, acted rather unusual here. During her first and second life, this energy was usually emitted by nature itself, resulting in places with higher grades of natural influences creating corresponding amounts of energy. However, this world was a little weird in that regard. Although trees and stuff like that were still producing natural energy, it was in much lower quantities than Yuna was used to, and after scouting around for a while and getting a feel for her surroundings, she realized why that was the case. A lot of the energy produced was actually reabsorbed by the environment it was produced by, resulting in everything being significantly tougher than it should have been. For example, the red line, which was a huge stone wall separating the world into two parts, going from north to south all around the planet, supposedly was only made of normal rock, but despite that, it was almost impossible to even leave a dent on it. Obviously, the same was true for living beings as well, which should lead to outrageously strong bodies depending on how much energy a person had managed to absorb over the course of their life. For example, despite having never cultivated before, Yuna could feel some natural energy within Nami's body, strengthening it beyond what a normal human was capable of. Meanwhile, Nami felt something warm flow into her from the place Yuna's hand rested on. Initially, the warm current felt weird inside her body, but she quickly realized that it was a rather comfortable experience. She felt the current wander through her whole body, seemingly following a predetermined path, before finally coming to a rest at the place above her belly button Yuna previously mentioned. There, the little ball of energy stopped moving, while the warm feeling it initially produced briefly became warmer before settling down. "Did you feel something, Nami?" Nami, who still had her eyes closed, nodded her head before she began to describe what she had felt. "I could feel some kind of strange energy enter my body from the palm of your hand. It circulated through my body for a while before coming to a rest at the place you previously told me about." After Nami finished her explanation, silence reigned the ship, confusing her a little, but before she could open her eyes and ask what the problem was, Yuna resumed talking. "You felt all of it? Everything, from the point of me sending the energy into you, from it settling down?" "MHH. Yes? Is that weird?" "Sorry, Nami, but I'll be needing a drop of your blood after all." "You are not getting any of my BLO." The moment Nami heard that Yuna yet again wanted her blood, she turned around and yelled at Yuna, but before she could finish speaking, her words got stuck in her throat, as Yuna actually wore a serious expression. Seeing that kind of expression on Yuna's face, Nami's anger quickly dissipated as a feeling of slight fear overcame her. Is it something bad?" "Not at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's something good. I just showed you a technique that allows you to absorb the energy in the air around you, natural energy. However, the technique I showed you is a generic one that works for almost everyone. Considering you could follow the energy on the first try, there is a high chance that you have some kind of special constitution. In case you do, only using a generic method would be a shame. So, I need a drop of your blood and analyze it to find out more." Nami pondered Yuna's explanation for a brief moment before she nodded her head in understanding. Now that Yuna was actually serious for once, Nami felt that she gave off quite a trustworthy image. However, before Nami could agree to Yuna's request, the duo's conversation was interrupted. "Energy? Will Nami be able to shoot a beam?" Luffy and Usopp, who had listened in on Yuna and Nomi's conversation, couldn't contain themselves any longer and were now looking at Yuna with stars in their eyes. They didn't really get much of what Yuna had just explained, but since Yuna said something about energy, surely she was talking about energy beams, right? What else could she have meant? While Yuna only chuckled, Nomi sighed deeply while face-palming. She loved the whole crew, she really did, but sometimes she seriously wondered what made her think joining this game of goofballs was a good idea. Well, that beams thing aside, I heard you have a training technique that can make someone stronger. If possible, can you teach me as well? What do you mean with the beam thing aside, Zoro? That's the most important part. You bastard. You only want it because you want to feel Unituan's hand on your back, right, Mushead? Well. On a side note, can you teach me as well? Who are you calling Mushead, shitty cook? Pipe down, you idiots. While everyone suddenly started yelling at each other, Yuna only leaned back against the mast and enjoyed the chaos. Yep, this will be a fun ride, Tilda. As expected of you. Literally, the first people you meet in this world are the embodiments of chaos. This group really fits you well. I know, right? After another brief conversation with Kurama, Yuna closed her eyes again and started meditating, attempting to find the best method to absorb this world's natural energy while simultaneously trying to send her consciousness into the going Maerry, attempting to awaken her spiritual consciousness. Yuna's bounty. The ship's deck continued being chaotic before everyone settled down, eager to have Yuna test whatever she tested with Nomi. So, each one sat down in front of Yuna, allowing her to send some natural energy into their bodies. The result was abysmal. The first one after Nomi was Luffy, who was the most eager to be able to use energy so he could shoot beams. The result? Before Yuna could even finish the first rotation of natural energy within Luffy's body, he got up from his sitting position and walked away, claiming that he was hungry. Yuna could only smile wryly at that. However, while rotating her natural energy, she found a weird accumulation of natural energy already within Luffy's body. Unlike normal natural energy and the one already refined within somebody's body, this one had a slightly sinister tinge to it. Yuna didn't need to think for long about where that came from and immediately concluded that the weird mass of natural energy was the result of Luffy eating a devil fruit. I see, so this is how a devil fruit changes someone's body. The slight sinister feeling it gives must be the curse preventing people who ate it from swimming. That being the case, why does Luffy's devil fruit radiate such a warm feeling? Is it always like this, or is there something special about Luffy's? Considering this is literally the first one you take a look at, we can only guess. Hearing Kurama's words, Yuna simply hummed an acknowledgement. Anyway, following Luffy, it was Usopp's turn, who was pretty much as eager as Luffy. Unlike Nomi, who would feel something instantly, it took Usopp around 5 rotations, which likely meant that his talent was slightly above average. However, while rotating her natural energy within Usopp, she noticed that it was actually drawn to his eyes, hinting at a possibility of evolution of his eyes. However, stuff like that was usually rather painful or even potentially dangerous, so she had some doubt about someone as cowardly as Usopp pushing through. Following Usopp, it was Zoro's turn. However, when there was not even a sliver of a reaction after the 10th rotation, Yuna decided to stop. Seems like you don't have much affinity for this if you still can't feel anything. Either this method doesn't work for you, or you have a very bad talent for it. Zoro. ZZZZZZ. Yuna's eyebrows twitched in irritation as, apparently, Zoro had fallen asleep at some point in time, making it rather clear why he didn't feel anything. He was sleeping the whole time. Finally, it was Sanji's turn. However, the moment Yuna's hand touched Sanji's back, a perverted grin appeared on his face as a trickle of blood started constantly flowing out of his nose. Seeing that, Yuna could only shake her head and remove her hand, claiming that there was no way he would be able to feel anything with such an unstable mind. With tears of blood in his eyes, Sanji asked Yuna to try again, swearing that he could control him. The result, he couldn't. Anyway, while Yuna was testing the rest of the crew, Noma finally agreed to Yuna's request, resulting in a thin ice needle appearing in Yuna's hand, which she used to prick Nomi's finger, causing a small amount of blood to escape, which Yuna quickly caught with a small container made out of ice. What exactly are you planning to do with that, Yuna? This. Hearing Nomi's question, everyone's attention was drawn to the small drop of blood, and before anyone could ask any further questions, Yuna pumped a lot of natural energy into the drop of blood, causing it to glow. In her second life, a process like this was never necessary, as chakra paper existed, usually giving a good indicator about a person's affinities, but since something like that was available, Yuna had to use a different method, taking a drop of blood from a person and overloading it with natural energy. Moments later, the drop of blood stopped glowing, allowing the crew to see that there were now 4 drops of an unknown liquid present. 2 yellow ones, 1 blue one, and 1 white one that gave Yuna a rather familiar feeling. MHH, 4 affinities. More isn't necessarily better, but let's see what we got. The ice under the first drop vanished, allowing it to touch Yuna's hand, allowing the concentrated natural energy that was not infused with an element to touch her skin. Feeling the smooth, familiar sensation on her skin, Yuna nodded her head in approval. Water, huh? That's a good start. Considering that there are no red elements that could represent fire or something similar, the flexibility of water is a good base to make 4 affinities work. The next drop touched her hand, giving her a prickling feeling. That's a lightning. MHH that could work well with water. Moments later, another drop touched her skin, and feeling the weird, formless sharpness it gave her, a glint went through her eyes as she had a rather good guess about Nomi's ability. Finally, the last drop touched Yuna, giving her a familiar cold feeling, causing her to smile while nodding in approval. As expected, that's ice affinity. Wind, water, lightning, and ice, huh? It's rather obvious what that means. Naturally, Nomi noticed the change in Yuna's facial expression, making her curious. What is it? Is it something good or bad? Yuna heard a tinge of worry in Nomi's voice and chuckled lightly before she resumed speaking. Bad? No, not at all. In fact, it's something pretty good. Water, lightning, wind, and ice. Your constitution is aligned with these 4 elements. Frankly, having 4 different element affinities is not a good thing, as spending time on so many different things would lose you a lot of time, but the combination you have is rather special, so it will be fine. Rather than looking at them separately, forcing you to invest time in each of the 4, it would be more reasonable to look at them as a whole. As aspected of our navigator, you have a weather affinity. Nomi's eyes widened as a lot of things became more clear to her. She didn't entirely understand what it meant to have a weather affinity, but considering how effortlessly she could predict the weather all her life, she could certainly believe Yuna's claim to be true. Naturally, after seeing the interesting show Yuna had just displayed, everyone else was eager to have a go as well, causing Yuna to roll her eyes but comply anyway. As a result, Luffy's blood produced a single weird-looking yellow and red droplet, which Yuna initially assumed to be something like lava, but to her surprise, it was actually an affinity with the sun. Affinity to a celestial body. What is this? Some kind of high-ranked cultivation realm. Although Luffy's affinity was insane, considering his ultra-short attention span, Yuna doubted he would be able to push that very far, if at all. Next, Yuna revealed that Usopp seems to have some kind of affinity with plant life, which was rather rare as well but seriously didn't fit his current fighting style. Speaking about that, Yuna only shrugged her shoulders, not thinking about it any further, until Usopp actively asked her for advice. Although Zoro was still sleeping, everyone egged her on to test him as well, which she decided to do with a shrug of her shoulders, revealing Zoro to have an affinity towards swords and flames, which was a good thing as he was already working on one of those. Finally, it was Sanji's turn. However, he vehemently denied wanting to know anything about his bloodline or affinities, causing Yuna to shrug while Luffy and Usopp were bowing him. Seems like Sanji has some kind of secret regarding his origins. Oh well, I won't bother prying for now. Maybe later, if I get a good chance. Just like that, another day passed as the crew got closer and closer to the Grand Line, but before that could happen, another event took place as a news crew landed on the Going Maerry's deck, delivering another newspaper. After paying for it and yet again complaining over the price, Nomi opened it up and immediately sighed deeply while face-palming. Oh? What an interesting reaction. What happened, Nomi? Hearing Yuna's question, Nomi could only sigh again as she took a bounty poster out of the newspaper and tossed it at Yuna, who easily caught it. I have no idea how, but I feel you did this on purpose somehow. Catching the bounty poster, Yuna took a look at it and nodded in approval. It displayed a picture of herself wearing a tight bathing suit. She was slightly leaning forward, revealing her cleavage to the camera while crossing her arms underneath her breasts, pushing them up slightly. Additionally, she wore a sultry smile while winking at the viewer. MHH, as expected of me. It's such a good photo, however, saw deviant Yuna. MHH, I guess I'm fine with that moniker. However, 25 million is definitely too low. There is at least one zero missing. Yet again, Nomi could only sigh and sigh again while Yuna studied her wanted poster. However, hearing Yuna's comment about her bounty, she resumed speaking. That's actually quite the insane bounty. Since Luffy is the captain, there is a high chance his bounty got inflated because capturing the captain usually leads to the crew disbanding. So we aren't even on the Grand Line yet, but our crew's combined bounty is already over 50 million Maerry. There will be a lot of trouble ahead. Hearing Nomi's explanation, Yuna nodded in understanding. Inflating a captain's bounty indeed made sense. I see, so guess the fact that I stripped all those Marines naked must have had at least some kind of effect on my bounty, huh? Yeah, prober. Wait a moment, what did you just say? Ma, don't worry about it, Tilda. I do worry about it. Is that where the deviant part of your moniker comes from? What exactly did you do? As Nomi was questioning Yuna, she grabbed her shoulders, shaking Yuna back and forth, making her laugh. Ha ha ha, chill, Nomi. It was no big deal, Tilda. They just blocked my path with a few dozen Marines, so I went past them and sliced off the clothes on their bodies while doing so. No worries, none of them got hurt, Tilda. That's not what I'm worried about. Hee Tilda. Don't hee me. Having finished her rant, Nomi sank to the ground, tears spilling out of her eyes as she looked skyward in desperation. So what did I do to deserve this? We already had a pervert who flirts with every attractive woman he sees in the crew, and now we have someone even more degenerate who forcefully strips people in public. Seriously, if this keeps going, won't we be called the pervert pirates in the future? In case it calms you down, forcefully mass stripping a bunch of people is far from the most degenerate thing I have ever done. That's not even in the top 10. I know, right? What's she making such a fuss about? Oh yes, that makes it much better. As if. That makes it even worse. While Nomi was having a little breakdown, Yuna proudly raised her bounty poster and displayed it to the rest of the crew. Hey everyone, I've just got my bounty as well. Although everyone has heard Nomi yelling for a while now, none decided to approach for now due to Nomi's demon-like expression while yelling at Yuna. However, when they heard Yuna's bounty poster, all of them got curious and approached her. The first to arrive was Sanji, who... Yuna Chwan, such an erodi. Cough amazing poster. Instantly had his eyes turned into hearts as he started drooling over Yuna's picture. TSK, to think you had just joined and you already have a wanted poster. I'll need to do something big on the next island to quickly get bounty surpassing yours. Hee, good luck with that, Zoro. MHH, a pity, I'm not on this one. However, what's with the erotic pose? Shishishishi, seems like we are getting more and more known around the world. This will be fun, Tilda. Yuna hummed an acknowledgement as her gaze landed on the colossal stone wall in the distance. By now, the going Maerry was pretty close to the Grand Line, and it was only a matter of time before the crew reached Reverse Mountain, which was the access point to the Grand Line. However, as they continued sailing, Yuna and Nomi both looked up in confusion. While Yuna noticed that something was off in general, Nomi noticed that something had drastically changed with the weather. She looked around, quickly analyzing that there were no clouds in the sky, that there was no wind, and that, apparently, there weren't even any currents. Realizing what was going on, her face paled instantly. Shit. Everybody grab a rudder. We have accidentally stumbled into the calm belt. While Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp looked at Nomi in confusion, Yuna wasted no time, and before anyone else could act, a set of large paddles entirely made out of ice landed on the deck while Yuna was already ready to paddle wherever Nomi told her to. Obviously, Yuna had no clue about this world, so following Nomi's commands was the best option for now. On top of that, Nomi was not only more knowledgeable about this world, but she was also this ship's navigator, giving her words even more weight. Although Nomi was dumbfounded at how quickly Yuna acted, she swiftly realized that there was no time to be in a daze and quickly continued speaking. Turned the ship around. This place is dangerous. Although Yuna didn't know what was so dangerous about this place, she could at least feel that it was rather creepy, as there was not even a sliver of movement within this place's natural energies, which should be almost impossible. It was still there, but it simply didn't move, as if it was frozen in space. So, hearing Nomi's words, Yuna swiftly started moving the two ice paddles she held while simultaneously concentrating on the sea in front of the Going Maerry, forming an ice path that allowed the ship to swiftly and gently turn around. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew was briefly dumbfounded, but seeing Yuna taking action so quickly, without asking any questions, they automatically were kicked into gear as well and supported Yuna with moving the ship. Seconds later, the Going Maerry was back in an area of the sea where the wind was blowing, and before anyone could ask why Nomi reacted so intensely, the sea surface where the Going Maerry was a few seconds ago broke, revealing dozens of colossal sea monsters, each at least 10 times the size of the Going Maerry. Seeing such a spectacle, Yuna couldn't help but lick her lips, as she could feel how much natural energy was stored in these monsters. Damn, these look delicious, but I feel they would be a little hard to kill right now, especially if it is so many of them at once. Unaware of Yuna's thoughts, the rest of the crew looked at the den of monsters not too far away from them in terror, realizing that Nomi's realization and Yuna's swift action had just prevented them from being in serious trouble. Even Luffy, who usually rushed into every fight head first, had some doubts about fighting monsters of this size. And in Nomi, what the hell was that? Hearing Usopp ask her a question while his whole body was shivering in terror, Nomi took a few deep breaths to calm herself down and started explaining what had just happened. Just now, we accidentally stumbled into the Calm Belt. It's the place separating the four seas and the Grand Line. It is no wind, no weather, no currents, and worst of all, it's a breeding ground for colossal sea kings, as you have just witnessed. Realizing just how dangerous a situation they had just dodged, everyone sighed in relief. Well, everyone but Shishishi, we aren't even in the Grand Line yet, and we already found such an interesting place. How exciting, Tilda. All right, let's go the Grand Line. There was nothing exciting about that. While Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp were busy beating up Luffy for being an idiot, Nomi sighed in relief as she gave Yuna a grateful look. After all, the only reason why the crew managed to get out of the Calm Belt so easily was because Yuna instantly reacted to Nomi's words. Feeling Nomi's gaze on her, Yuna looked in her direction and winked at Nomi, causing her to roll her eyes while she couldn't help but smile a little. How funny. To think that that pervert would be the most reliable one in this crew. Oh well, guess it's time to find our way to the Grand Line. Unbeknownst to Nomi, who had put her attention back on navigating, a smirk appeared on Yuna's face. Hee hee, the first step of corruption was a success. Tilda. Let's see what other chances I'll get. Tilda. Damsel in distress. Yeah, I feel like that one could be very likely. Oh well, let's see how it goes. Tilda. Reaching the Grand Line. Usopp is an idiot. Tilda. Who did you just call an idiot? Idiot. Ha. Did you just call me an idiot? While Luffy and Usopp were yet again pressing their foreheads against each other in anger and Yuna casually stowed away her tone dial, the entrance to the Grand Line finally became visible. It was a pathway of water that was actually flowing up Reverse Mountain, immediately drawing everyone's attention. No way, the water is actually flowing up the mountain. How is that possible? Hearing Sanji's question, everyone kept quiet for a moment before Nomi started speaking. A current strong enough to pull the water up the mountain and into the Grand Line. How incredible. Now I'm really looking forward to what kind of place the Grand Line is. Shishishi, let's go. Now that we are about to enter the Grand Line, how about a little celebration? As those words left Sanji's mouth, he placed a barrel in the middle of the deck and put his foot on it with a wide smile. To find the All Blue. To become the king of the pirates. To become the world's greatest swordsman. To become a great warrior of the sea. To become the Harem Queen. Following Sanji, Luffy, Zoro, Nomi, Usopp, and finally, Yuna all put their feet on the barrel while declaring their goal. Although Yuna's goal felt a little off, no one commented on it. Shishishi, off to the Grand Line we go. As Luffy's roar echoed over the Going Maerry, the crew of 6 raised their legs and smashed the heel of their feet onto the top of the barrel, destroying it in the process and allowing the crew to drink the alcohol within. After the crew was done with their little celebration, the Going Maerry continued sailing toward Reverse Mountain, but suddenly, trouble appeared. There is a problem. The current is too strong and I can't move the rudder. Usopp's panicked yell echoed over the Going Maerry, drawing everyone's attention. Usopp was currently holding the ship's rudder, and despite leaning his whole weight into it, it didn't move a single centimeter. Seeing that, Nomi's eyes widened in shock as she quickly analyzed their current course, causing her to panic as well. This is bad. If we continue riding this current without deviation, we are going to crash into the red line. Let me help you, Usopp. The moment Nomi announced the danger they were in, Sanji instantly sprung into action and wanted to help Usopp pull on the rudder while Luffy prepared himself to use his rubber body as a cushion. However, before anyone else could spring into action, the ship briefly shook before her course changed. Ma, let me get this one. Yuna's lazy voice was heard, gathering everyone's attention. Looking at her, everyone saw that Yuna currently had one hand on the ship's railing, and from that hand, a single string of ice was moving downward into the sea. From the place the ice touched the sea, it quickly froze, turning large patches of the sea into ice, except for a single canal that redirected the current perfectly toward the entrance of Reverse Mountain, allowing the Maerry a smooth passage. The moment the Maerry safely entered the pathway, Yuna's ice melted, leaving no proof of her ability behind. Silence briefly covered the Maerry's deck, but moments later, excitement broke loose. Damn, that was so cool. Awesome, Shishishi tilde. You are the best, Yuna chwan tilde. Sigh, thanks for that, Yuna. To think we almost sunk before we even could reach the Grand Line. While Luffy and Usopp had stars in their eyes due to Yuna's action, Sanji instantly started fawning over her, while Nomi sighed in relief. I see, so you have finally started falling in love with me, Nomi. Sure, tilde. Hee, scene. Before you say anything else, I would like to let you know that that answer was sarcasm. Oh. I knew that. Sure you did. Just like that, the crew safely entered the passage, guiding them to the top of Reverse Mountain, and a few minutes later, they finally reached the peak of the mountain, where the water streams from the four blues met and flowed into the Grand Line. The Going Maerry safely entered the waterway flowing into the Grand Line, but as she was sailing downward, a rumbling could be heard in the distance. Did you hear that? Hearing Yuna's question, everyone kept silent for a few seconds, allowing all of them to hear a distant rumbling echoing over the sea. No one had a clue what kind of thing they were hearing, but they could at least confirm that it was getting louder. What is that? There is a huge wall blocking the exit of Reverse Mountain. Drawn by Usopp's panicked yell, no one bothered about the strange rumbling sound and focused on the entrance to the Grand Line, where, indeed, some massive black thing was blocking their path. While everyone was dumbfounded by that, not entirely sure what they were supposed to do, Yuna squinted her eyes while she focused on her senses. Second later, her eyes widened in surprise as she realized what was blocking their path. That's not a wall. That's a massive whale. What? Obviously, the crew was shocked by that revelation while simultaneously realizing that the loud rumbling they could hear very clearly by now was the roaring of the whale blocking their path. As the Maerry was getting closer and closer to crashing into the whale, everyone initially panicked about what they were supposed to do to not crash into the massive whale at high speed, but Yuna's leisurely voice quickly reminded them that there was no problem. Seriously, that is the third time I have to save the ship today. We really aren't off to a good start, are we? Shishishi, isn't it fine? After all, it went well every time. Hearing Luffy's carefree answer, Yuna smiled wryly as she yet again created ice underneath the Going Maerry, gently allowing the ship to sail past the massive whale blocking most of the path. Unfortunately, before the crew could be happy about passing past the whale, it opened its mouth, resulting in ridiculous amounts of water flowing in its mouth, pulling the Maerry along. Why, Yuna, can you do something? MHH. You want me to cut it? See, cut it. Can you even do that? No, that's not important right now. Can't you use your ice again? MHH, not really. I could use my ice to somewhat control our course within the existing currents, but currently, all the currents are going into the whale's mouth. I could surround the ship's hull with my ice to make it bigger, but I doubt it would help. Seeing that the Going Maerry was slowly getting dragged into the whale's mouth, Nomi asked Yuna to do something with her ice, but unfortunately, the situation wasn't the same as before, where they could move with the current. Then cut it. Cut it. Na tilde. What do you mean by na? Watching Nomi getting more and more agitated, the rest of the crew decided not to comment any further. From their perspective, they were certain Yuna had some kind of plan. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so relaxed. Well, Zoro and Sanji thought so, while Usopp had already faded out of fear, and Luffy was only laughing in excitement, looking forward to whatever kind of adventure was about to come. However, aside from Yuna having some kind of plan, he also was wondering if Yuna really could cut such a massive creature. He, himself, doubted that he was capable of doing so, after all. Just how good is she with the sword? Unaware of Zoro's thoughts, Yuna raised her hand to pacify Nomi and resumed speaking with a calm voice. Calm down, Nomi. There is more to this whale than meets the eye. My senses are telling me that there is something rather interesting further ahead in the body of the whale. Nomi wanted to argue further, but seeing the confident look on Yuna's face, she could only give up. Additionally, since Yuna had already used the word interesting, she could also feel Luffy's eyes basically shining in anticipation due to what was about to happen. Well, that being said, we should at least wear some protection while going in. As Nomi was groaning due to Yuna's sexual innuendo, the ice started covering the bottom of the Going Maerry, protecting it with a thin layer of ice. After all, we don't want any stomach acid or other bodily fluids penetrating Maerry. The urge to smack Yuna for continuing her nonsense briefly overcame Nomi, but she managed to push it back, as Yuna's words, albeit a little twisted, were indeed correct. Just like that, the Going Maerry continued moving through the giant whale's body, and to everyone's surprise, they suddenly found themselves in what appeared to be an open space under the sky, and there was even a small island with a house on top of it. So COOL tilde. Luffy was instantly amazed that there was an apparently open space within the whale. However, Yuna quickly noticed that the sky was merely painted on the walls, making her chuckle in amusement. Suddenly, a giant squid rose from the sea, but before it could do anything, multiple harpoons pierced through it, pretty much killing it instantly. Following that, the body of the giant squid was pulled toward the island where the harpoons came from, drawing everyone's curiosity. A few seconds later, an old man wearing feathers on his head exited the house and pulled the squid toward himself while intensely glaring at the crew. And then he sat down and started reading a newspaper. Say something. While Sanji was losing his temper, the old man briefly glanced back at the crew, resulting in Usopp shaking in his boots. Do you want to fight? I am warning you, we have a cannon. Don't use it, or someone might end up dead. Hearing the old man's words, Sanji felt some pressure, causing him to loosen his tie instinctively. Oh? And who would that be? Me. You. Yet again, the old man and the crew were engulfed in a staring contest, but the moment the old man claimed that he would be the one dying, Sanji's temper finally went overboard as he prepared himself to attack the old man. However, before he could do so, Zoro pulled him back and started talking himself. Now, no need to get angry. Hey, old man, who are you, and where exactly are we? Shouldn't you introduce yourself before asking for someone's name? MHH. Oh, I guess that's right, I'm Crocus, the lighthouse keeper of Twin Capes. I'm 71 years old, a Gemini, and my blood type is AB. Before Zoro could get his introduction out, Crocus started giving an info dump about himself, completely ignoring what he had told Zoro previously about introducing himself first, causing Zoro's anger to spike. No one minds if I cut him, right? Now, calm down, Zoro. Let me talk with him, I know how to deal with shameless old man. Before Zoro could commit murder, Yuna stepped in and pulled Zoro away. She was just about to start talking to the old man when he resumed speaking. You are wondering where this place is. First, you trespass in my private resort, and then you even start mouthing off to me with an attitude. Where do you think this is? The belly of a mouse? In case you want to get out of here, there is the door, you can leave at any time. As Crocus finished speaking, he pointed toward a certain direction, where a door looked like it was floating in the sky due to being surrounded by the sky that was drawn on the inside of the whale's stomach. While everyone was dumbfounded due to there actually being a door outside, Yuna turned around with a smug expression on her face. See, I made him tell me everything we want to know about. How was that you're doing? As these words passed through everyone's mind, they decided not to comment any further. While everyone realized Yuna's method of dealing with the shameless old man, you needed to be shameless yourself. However, suddenly everything started crumbling, causing the sea of stomach acid the Maerry was in to become chaotic. Simultaneously, Crocus stood up from his seat and looked at the walls of the whale's stomach in concern. "Oh, old man, what is going on?" Hearing Nomi's question, Crocus briefly wondered if he should answer her or not, but in the end, he concluded that he might as well do so. "This whale has started bashing its head against the red line." Hearing Crocus's words, Yuna nodded in understanding. When they were coming down Reverse Mountain, she noticed that the whale's head was covered in deep scars. Considering it was currently bashing its head against the red line, she didn't need to be a genius to figure out where those scars came from. "I see, so it's in pain." Uttering a short sentence, the rest of the crew nodded in agreement while Crocus ignored the Straw Hat Pirates and jumped into the whale's stomach acid and swam toward one of the ladders fixed to the wall of the whale's stomach. Seeing his actions, most of them wrongly assumed that he planned to kill the whale from the inside, while only Yuna noticed that he was deeply concerned about the whale's well-being. However, while the whole place was shaking and tilting, another door on the walls of the whale's stomach suddenly opened, revealing two goofy figures that stumbled out of it, holding a bazooka each. However, rather than consciously going through the door, they stumbled through it due to how unsteady the footing within the whale was due to it rampaging around. So, rather than doing whatever they planned to do, the duo tripped, resulting in both of them falling toward the stomach acid below them. Seeing that, Luffy briefly thought about the situation before making a decision, stretching his arms to catch both of them and drag them on board the Maerry. "MHH. Why did you pull them in, Luffy?" Hearing Zoro's question, Luffy tilted his head in confusion before simply shrugging his shoulders. "Felt like it." Getting a very Luffy answer, Zoro only shrugged his shoulders, no longer bothering about the situation. Before the duo that got just smashed onto the Maerry deck could react, two predators had already zeroed in on them, causing two shadows to loom over them. "Greetings, beautiful miss. Would you like some tea? How about some snacks? Just say the word and I'll prepare whatever you want." "Hello, beautiful. Look at us, half of my hair matches the color of yours. I have to say, yours has an especially smooth and gorgeous blue color. That being said, since we are clearly made for each other, how about a date?" "Oh? How come you didn't invite her into your harem yet?" "Meh, she has a somewhat noble demeanor. If she is a stuck-up princess or something like that, I have no interest, so I'll have to feel her out first." Meanwhile, the blue-haired woman had no idea what was going on. She expected to fall into the whale's stomach acid, but somehow she landed on the deck of a ship. And then, before she could even regain her bearing, two people, a woman and a man, suddenly started hitting on her, confusing her even further. That being said, there was only one thing she could say about the duo's advances. "The fuck?"